So please mute when you're not presenting. I'm going to start the live event now.
Well, good morning, everyone. Greetings and welcome to everyone that has joined. Greetings and welcome to everyone that has joined this webinar, which focuses on modern silviculture technologies. My name is Muedanyi Ramantswana, and I'm a lecturer in forest engineering at the Nelson Mandela University, which is located at the George campus in South Africa. This is now the third year that we are running this webinar. And after the past 2 years events, we've been encouraged to continue offering this webinar because it helps us to remain updated about what is happening globally regarding silviculture technologies. This year, the webinar is titled or themed Enabling Modernization in Silviculture. We are glad that we have had a good response of over 300 participants who RSVP'd for this event. And as we've done in the past 2 years, our audience is quite diverse and coming from different areas across the world. Despite the different time zones, we have attracted both local and international audiences. Majority of our audience is from South Africa. However, we have representation from across the world, from some of our neighboring countries within Africa, such as Zimbabwe, Swaziland. We also have Malawi, Kenya, Tanzania, Uganda, and several others. South America, we also have countries that are represented here from people from Brazil as well as Chile, and from Europe, Finland, France, as well as Latvia. We also have far-reaching areas such as India, Indonesia, Malaysia, Sierra Leone, Pakistan, and China, as well as Australia. To all our international guests, welcome and thank you for joining us. The participants that RSVP'd for this event also are responsible for different occupations. We see that we also have foresters, contractors, silviculture specialists, academics, researchers, students, consultants, machine manufacturers, and we are so glad that we can have this diverse mix of people with different expertise joining to listen and learn and also share knowledge. Our hope is that this webinar will be able to help you to discover and learn from local and international experiences, to be able to exchange information, as well as build relationships as well as connections. To kick off, I'm going to introduce Dr. Kaluke Mawila, who is our campus principal at the George campus at the Nelson Mandela University. She is going to do a welcome. But before I hand over to her, I'm going to just briefly tell you a bit about her, as well as her background. Dr. Mawila has a doctorate in higher education from the University of Michigan, Ann Arbor in the United States of America, and a master's in arts degree focusing on student affairs administration from Michigan State University, East Lansing. Dr. Mawila earned her Bachelor of Social Sciences degree in Industrial Psychology from the University of Cape Town. Dr. Mawila, furthermore, was a Fulbright Fellow at Michigan State University, from which she also received the Nelson Mandela Fellowship. She has been a recipient of numerous prestigious academic awards, such as the Oppenheimer Trust Fund Fellowship, the NRF Prestigious and Equity Scholarship Abroad, the British Award Scheme Bursary from the British Council, the Rackham Graduate School Fellowship, the Moody Fellowship, and the Center for the Education of Women Fellowship at the University of Michigan, Ann Arbor. In addition, Dr. Mawila acquired a certificate through the Management Development Program from the University of Stellenbosch. And currently, she is the chairperson of the Forest 21 Advisory Board. Before her appointment as the campus principal, Dr. Mawila was the Executive Director of Planning and Development in the Strategy and Planning Partnership Division of the National Research Foundation. She has worked as the NRF Executive Director for Institutional Engagement and Partnership Development. She also acted as the NRF Executive Director for Applied Research, Innovation and Collaboration. She was further a director in the Knowledge Fields Development Directorate. But prior to joining the NRF, she was a policy analyst in the Policy Coordination and Advisory Services Unit of the Presidency at the Union Buildings, mainly responsible for capacity development and advancement. She has extensive work experience in the higher education sector as a researcher and administrator. She has worked at the University of Cape Town at the International Academic Programs Office as the Southern African Development Officer, which was responsible for dealing with student development and integration of international students. Without wasting any further time, I'm going to hand over to Dr. Mawila to do a welcome to all our attendees across the world. Dr. Mawila, over to you.
Good morning, colleagues, students, practitioners, as well as technologists in silviculture. I welcome you to the Modern Silviculture Conference 2022. I am honored to be here with you, and I am particularly proud of the Nelson Mandela University scholars for organizing a successful conference for the third year, and the attendance, as alluded to by Dr. Ramantswana, is evidence of how well we are doing to engage communities, practitioners, as well as technologists and students. The George campus of the Nelson Mandela University is a sustainable futures campus. Our focus is to ensure that whatever development we are doing, whatever science we're doing, including in silviculture, meets the needs of today as dictated by the struggles as well as the innovations of today, without compromising the ability of future generations all over the world, wherever you are representing your constituencies, without compromising the needs of the future generation. What is important that I think needs to be emphasized here is the need for us to use conversations such as this to liberate the human potential through humanizing innovative lifelong learning practices, so that even in the area of silviculture, we are able to advance research, innovation, technology, and community engagement in ways that ensure that our future stays even better, if not intact, than it is today. I want to commend all the scholars who have taken the time to really engage in the current challenges that we have in our sociological, technological, as well as ecological climate that force us to start thinking about modernizing and ensuring that our forests are managed sustainably. They are regenerated to ensure that students continue to advance knowledge, as well as to choose this as an area of study. We are very proud as Nelson Mandela University to be associated with yourselves, and we hope that in this conversation of today, we begin to build long-term relationships that begin to leverage each other's capacities from your respective areas. I want to commend the researchers who are able to advance knowledge through publication, but I also want to encourage us. As a university, Nelson Mandela has chosen very deliberately to commit to serving society. And society for us doesn't only just mean the area where we are located. It means the communities that benefit from the science, the practice, as well as the refinement of technologies in the areas of silviculture. I encourage colleagues to begin to think about ways in which communities can be enhanced, improved, as well as brought along in the science that we are doing. And I'm very pleased also to note the variety of individuals represented here by profession, also by affiliation, because that begins to say to us, this goes beyond the learning. It speaks to our survival as a common future, but it also speaks to how we begin to think about building knowledge that sustains the field of silviculture in deliberate ways. Technology will always remain one of those moving targets, and I do hope that even as it is a moving target, we can begin to use some of the knowledge that we are finding in these spaces to improve our standing as a nation in South Africa and as nations for those who are joining us, so that the future looks better for those who wish to pursue careers in this area. I am incredibly proud of our academics on the George campus for the work that they continue to do. If you can look at my background and Dr. Ramantswana's background, it is a very beautiful campus that we are located in. I do hope that at some point in future, we will get to host this conference physically in our space, and that you will raise your hands from far and wide to come and meet us here and enjoy the forest that we are embedded in. So I welcome you once again to this webinar, and I want to emphasize our commitment in supporting modern silviculture. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mawila, for opening the event and welcoming everyone. I'm now going to just give a brief overview of the theme and the context of this year's webinar. Then we will start with the proceedings of the day. So if you have observed over the past few years, you will have noticed that we have different new technologies that have emerged, and they are basically changing the way in which we perform and do silviculture. From just the biological part of silviculture, wherein we are interested in the soil, the biological structure of the tree and how it grows, now we are having to take that information and relate it to how we can be able to use technology to improve the way in which we do things. We often hear about how the world of work is also changing, meaning that in the next 5 to 10 years, we may have new forest occupations which require a different set of knowledge, skills, as well as training. So even though at different levels, we continue to see that many efforts are being put in place by contractors, by grower companies, by research institutions to facilitate the process of modernizing silvicultural operation. This process of modernizing is enabled by different innovations which facilitate the implementation and successful adoption of these technologies. When we talk about enabling, we are talking about the use of platforms which create an environment where other technologies and improvements can be made possible. Over the past few years, we have seen an increase in the use of these type of enabling technologies. For instance, we see the increased use of unmanned aerial vehicles to collect stand data through aerial photometrics, digital imagery, as well as the use of AUVs in performing actual silvicultural activities, such as spraying. We also see the increased use of remote sensing, LiDAR, satellite imagery, which enables us to have very precise information on stand conditions as well as stand health. Furthermore, we also observe that there's automation technologies which are enabling forest equipment to be able to be used more efficiently and more autonomously. For example, we see some pitting equipment which can be pre-programmed to pit in specific locations within a compartment, and we can have accurate details of where our trees are planted. See, these technologies are growing and they are being adopted because of the need to improve efficiencies as well as safety, amongst other reasons. So this theme of enabling modernization in silviculture, it focuses on all these various technologies that are beginning to come together to improve the way in which we practice silviculture and accurately monitor the impacts of this new technology that we are adopting. Today, we are going to listen to 7 interesting presentations, 4 from local South Africans, and 3 from international presenters who are based in Brazil. And all these presenters have voluntarily agreed to share their knowledge, their experience, and what they are involved in terms of these technologies that are enabling silviculture modernization. These presentations cut across the silvicultural industry, focusing on nurseries. We are going to focus on re-establishment, planting technologies, as well as the use of drones. So these type of knowledge sharing platforms are important because they not only provide us with information, but they also open up our minds to opportunities that exist, as well as stimulate our minds to rethink the way in which we do things with the goal of improving and refining our forest practices. My hope is that today you'll be able to engage with our speakers beyond just the general discussions that we'll have today and be able to create and pioneer a new way of doing things, or just simply improving the way in which we do things. Just some technical things as we start. Please note that we have broken the webinar into 2 sections. So after the 4 local presentations, we are going to have a Q&A session. Then we will take a brief 15-minute break, then resume to complete the remaining 3 presentations from our international presenters. After that, we will then have our final Q&A session. Before each presentation, I will briefly introduce the speaker, then I will hand over to them to deliver the presentation. So please take note that we have the Q&A session at the end. So in the meantime, post your questions as we proceed with the presentations. We have a Q&A session section wherein you can just post any questions that you have and we will deal with them at the end. So each presentation is about 15 minutes. So we are looking forward to the content that our presenters will share. We are at the mercy of technology. There may be technical glitches which may occur. And as we are going to be in different locations, please bear with us if anything occurs. Locally, for those that are in South Africa, we know that we've got challenges with some of the power outages. If it occurs, we do have the necessary backup systems to ensure that we can proceed without too many hassles. The webinar will also be recorded, and if you are interested in a link after the webinar, you can then contact me and I will share it with you. Right, so let's get to the interesting part of our day. So we are going to start off with our first presentation, and it's going to be delivered by Mr. Damian Naidu. And just briefly about Mr. Naidu is that Damian completed his MSc at the University of Natal in Durban, and he focused in forestry, pulping, and paper making. He previously completed a BSc and BSc Honours Degree Cum Laude at the University of Natal. And he mainly focused on animal behavioral ecology and cell biology. He has completed a postgraduate qualification at GIBS, which is the International Leadership Development Program, and he also completed that cum laude. In terms of his work experience, Damian is presently employed by SEPI Forests as a program leader, and he focuses on nursery technologies at SEPI's Shore Research Center in Howick. His main research focus is vegetative propagation and nursery technology. In terms of some of the outputs that Damian has, he has published scientific papers in peer-reviewed journals and also has authored many internal research documents for SEPI Forest research. Today, Mr. Naidu will be presenting on the topic of technologies for improved nursery plant survival as well as growth. I am now going to hand over to you, Mr. Naidu. We look forward to your presentation.
Thank you, Muedanyi, for that. Thank you, Muedanyi, for that wonderful introduction. So today I've been invited to speak about technologies for improved nursery survival and growth. And this is a very vast and diverse topic. So for the purpose of this presentation, I've excluded robotics, and we're just going to talk about technologies that can be implemented quite easily without large expense in a nursery environment. And a lot of this presentation points towards how we as an industry or as a company can do things better, faster, and cheaper. So I thought it will be apt to start this presentation with a bit of a background on the process flow around eucalypt propagation, as not many of the audience may be familiar with the in-depth details of eucalypt propagation. So to just start and to map the process out, in most forestry commercial companies, we would have something called a mother plant or a hedge. And this is depicted by this individual image on where the pointer is showing on the screen. And one would take various types of cuttings from this mother plant that's of a specific high genetic worth variety, and that cutting would be set into a greenhouse under intermittent mist in order to root. After a period of about 6 to 8 weeks, that cutting would strike root, and that can either be in plastic insert tubes or in more modern, more biodegradable Elipot tubes. And then after a further 6 weeks, those plants would be ready for grow out. And that plant can then be diverted either back into hedges to bulk up your headstock, or they can be planted directly in field into the forest. So that introduction slide gives a bit of a summation on the entire process of eucalypt propagation. So with propagation in general, there's essentially 3 pillars of nursery efficiency that I want to look at. And the first pillar is your hedge or your mother plant. And in this pillar, you got to look at aspects such as the health of that mother plant, the nutrition and how you maintain the nutrition of the mother plant, the juvenility, and that goes hand in hand with the shape of the hedge. And all that points towards increasing your production from that mother plant hedge. And we like to see that hedge or that mother plant as a golden goose, because the better you treat and care for that mother plant, the more cuttings you would get and the better quality cuttings you would get off that mother plant. The second pillar is the cutting that emanates from that mother plant. And for the cutting, you'd look at aspects such as the morphology of that cutting, how one maintains the mist and cold chain of that cutting. And we like to see the cuttings as the golden egg that emanates from the golden goose. The third or final pillar in the chain is looking at rooting. And for rooting, one would really try and manage the environment around which that cutting is set and roots. We'd look at the type of media depending on the environment that you're rooting the cutting in. And then based on your appetite for expense, you can either go very technologically advanced or quite rudimentary in your structure and your equipment on how you would root a cutting. I wanted to start off the discussion by looking at paper pots. And paper pots are essentially biodegradable paper that's surrounding compost. It looks like a sausage or a tube of compost that's surrounded by this paper. And there's a multitude of different types of paper that have different degradation times and different properties. For the purpose of this talk, we're going to look at the forestry paper that has a 12-month plus lifespan. It's an eco-friendly paper as well. And the purpose of the paper is to allow roots to penetrate the paper and to be air pruned, as you can see in this image on the slide. The benefits of air pruning: you get a more robust root system with a better root architecture. You have fewer or hardly any root deformations in your cutting root plug. And all of that points towards a plant that's enabled to capture the planting pit much faster. So why would we need paper pots? Well, there's a strong need for a better root system because you want to capture the pit much faster to give you better field survival. And the higher field survival will result in the better utilization of this high value planting stock that we propagate in our nurseries. And that all points towards giving us more timber per unit area. We also want, on the flip side, we also want to decrease the utilization of plastic inserts in our industry. The plastic inserts are often left behind in field after the planting operation, and this is a non-biodegradable commodity. And the less we can leave behind of plastic in the environment, the better. One would also have to then go and collect and return those inserts to the nursery, where there's added manpower required for sorting, cleaning, and packing those inserts back into trays. One of the most important elements is looking at plug extraction. In the field, often the foresters in the audience would attest to the fact that it can often be quite an arduous and strenuous task to remove plants from plastic inserts. And this can come with unskilled labor because of high turnover, and the labor force can often use rough tactics and rough techniques to extract these plants from the insert, and that in itself often leads to a variety of root damage. Also, in growing in plastic inserts, as I'll unpack in the next few slides, can result in various root deformations. That's because we have a physical boundary for the roots, and often this physical boundary guides the roots downwards and results in a caging type of root system. So we've done a number of different research trials, and I'm just going to give you a snapshot of some of the results, and I've chosen a more visual element to display these results. So we took both cuttings grown in plastic insert trays and cuttings grown in Elapart trays, and we potted them out into black plastic bags in the nursery. After 1 month, we extracted these plants and we took various images and we ran the root plugs through image analysis to quantify and qualify the type of root systems that we would get. And you can see on this image on the slide, 1 month after potting, this is a typical situation that would happen out in field with a plastic insert tray. You'd get some caging of the root system, and then most of your roots would be guided downwards towards the drainage hole, and that's where all your active white root development would occur. And this is essentially a one-dimensional root structure. So if you plant this out into the pit, your root growth, your active new root growth would be in one dimension vertically downwards. And this is validated with the image analysis. The benefit of the Elapart is that we would get, after 1 month of potting, roots emanating from 360 degrees around that root plug and along the entire length of that root plug. So one can imagine now the surface area of that root system that will be exposed to the planting pit and how much faster this root system can capture that planting pit. This is imperative in situations of climate change in the future where the early spring rains tend to be moving later and later, which means we're going to have a prolonged dry season through the winter. And this type of root system will allow the plant to capture the pit much faster, and especially in harsher environments, result in much better survival than the conventional method of growing plants in plastic inserts. So moving on to the next element of the presentation is how do we encapsulate Nursery 4.0 and advanced analytics into a nursery environment? And the goal here is to create a fully integrated digital system that we can measure and manage key parameters, whether those are chemical, physical, or biological. And this can provide us with information in almost near real time and in a manner that's useful for us to then be agile and adapt our process and to be flexible and alter our management practices if needed. And for this type of setup, we can look at a LoRaWAN type setup, which is a long-range wide area network, and we can incorporate multiple cheap sensors to increase our efficiencies and automate the process. We can measure and manage things as live water measurements for EC and pH. We can measure your rooting greenhouse environment for temperature and humidity. You can look at managing your irrigation moisture to determine when and how much and how frequent you rewater your plants. You can also investigate how you can manage your stock in your nursery at any given time. And you can take this further to look at your asset management and do a maintenance schedule as well. One element that we can investigate to manage traceability within a nursery environment is use of QR codes. And QR codes can be used to track seedling batches from the nursery right through until the plantation. And the QR code is quite an easy technique to adopt, and you can store a lot of information such as the history of that seedling batch, the variety that's accompanied, and any other information that you want to attach to the QR code. Now that gives us the entire history of the batch. So when we do have a problem in the field, that we can trace right back to the source and right back to the elements that that plant received throughout its life in the nursery. So some people may ask that why should we measure plants in the nursery? Well, one of the reasons is we want to have the vision to sustainably produce quality material that enter our forests. We want to have the best physiological quality for the field, and we want this to be within the right time window because we want to ensure that our foresters get the highest value plants and that they're able to plant a uniform crop. In order to do this, we need to measure frequently and we need to make informed decisions. And we need to do this throughout the crop life cycle. We can't only measure quality at the end of the crop life cycle, because that means we can't have any ameliorative action to rectify or remedy any ill health in the plant. So we want to be proactive rather than reactive. And in order to do this, we have to have some sort of plant quality index. And at SAPI, we have an internal plant quality index that was derived in the 1990s. And all the plant quality index should strive to do is to measure the fitness and the potential of that plant to survive in the field after outplanting. However, this plant quality index requires some sort of measuring capacity within your nursery. And this is often in the form of a manual physical measurement, which can be comprehensive and can take a lot of time. It is also subjective and prone to human errors and results in additional plant handling, which can be costly. And because of this additional resource capacity, often less percentage of plants are quality stamped than one would like. So because you have to have a trade-off between the amount of plants you measure versus the time and resources it takes to measure those plants. So the ultimate goal should be to measure as many plants as you can that leave your nursery gate. And to facilitate that process, we want to try and use technology for measuring plants smarter and faster and more accurate. So if we can develop a system that can have multitude of sensors that can sense that plant and transfer it to some sort of image where we can interpret, that will be the ideal goal. So the idea for this really came out through computer vision technology, and a lot of people that have kids and that use Xbox 360 will be familiar with this type of device on the screen. And this device measures the gamer and measures all the parameters around the gamer to optimize the gaming experience. And we then thought, if this can be done for humans and for gaming experience, why can't we do something similar for plants? And that was really the brainchild and the incubator for something that we want to call Rapid Plant Quality Assessment, or RPQ, where you have an input object such as a plant, you have some sort of sensing device and some sort of interpreting device, whether that's a Python script or some sort of photogrammetry software, and then we can transfer that image and extract pertinent information from that image, such as the height of the plant, the color of the plant, the number of leaves, and the root color diameter, or even other characteristics that can be extracted and put that into some sort of database or dashboard. So some of the examples of how we utilize this technology is that in more recent releases of iOS on the iPhone camera, they've developed some sort of measurement software, and one can use that or similar software on Android phones to simply capture a tray of plants, and we can automate that measurements by using curtaining technology to get a frequency histogram of heights within a tray. And you can use this information to develop growth curves at any one given time during your nursery, and even assist with automating your measurement of plant quality. Another example is if you just take a multispectral sensor, and these are found on most multispectral drones, and you can take images of your hedge environment or your hedge plants, and you run an index to find a zone that's lower health than your average per zone, and you can get some indication then of how healthy your hedges are based on either canopy measurements or other vegetation indices. We can also look at thermal imaging, and for this image on the far left, you can see that the media on the left on this image is a lighter brown color. So it's a drier tray than the image on the right, which is well irrigated and it has more moisture. And we can use this thermal imaging that's available on a simple cat phone to transfer that into whether a plant is stressed or well irrigated based on color. And you can see the purple color indicates stress or a drier plant compared to the dark blue, which is well irrigated plants. And this thermal image can also be transferred using GIS mapping techniques to various layers, and then you can transfer that image to whether there's a high desiccation on the image or a low desiccation to determine your stress categories for an image. So thank you, everyone. That was just a brief snapshot into what can be done in a nursery environment with regards to technology and automation. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much, Damien, for that very interesting presentation. I think what you're doing there is very, very fascinating and almost cutting edge in terms of how to be able to get to the intricate details of growth and being able to derive that information and using it to monitor the growth as well as the survival of plants. Thank you for that. We are now going to proceed and go to our second presentation. And our second presentation will be delivered by Mr. Dumisani Shweni. And he is the CEO of New Forestry Solutions, which is a contractor company. And Dumisani has more than 16 years experience in forestry, mainly specifically in silviculture. And he has worked for the big grower companies in South Africa, both SEPI and Mondi, also performing silvicultural operations as a forester. In terms of his education, Dumisani has a BTech in forestry. He also has a BTech in business administration through UNISA. Further to that, he also has a certificate for Mondi Duke Cooperation Education Program, which is facilitated by Duke University. Dumisani brings a wealth of knowledge in terms of clients' requirements and technical silviculture skills. Today, Mr. Shweni will be sharing with us about the concept of mechanized planting on steep terrain. Mr. Shweni, we are looking forward to your presentation and interesting things that you are involved in. Over to you.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you, Doc. Will you please share my presentation? Can you please put it in presentation mode? Right. Thank you for the introduction. Our topic today will be about steep terrain establishment, as been requested. So basically, New Forestry Solutions is a contractor that is working for Mondi at Mkomazi area. So basically, we are situated at southern of the Natal, and the characteristics of the area is steep terrain and rocky areas. Hence, then we had to adopt our operations and modernize them to meet the requirements of the area. As you will see other places, you will find that their modernization is a little bit different from us due to they have a flat area. But us, we had to adopt technology to suit us. Just a brief overview. Okay. So, like I said, why steep area establishment? Like I just introduced you that of the area, and I think so. We then sat down with a client, and then we said, how do we make sure that we modernize to ensure that we keep up with the new technology and the modernization in silviculture? So the access with the normally tractor is very limited, rocky and mountainous areas, so body, and then the need to modernize. Basically, it's a three setup system. For spraying, as you know, that for establishment, you need to do your pre-plant. So instead of having people carrying 16 liters of water up and down, we partnered up with IAS, area integrated systems, which are based in Cape Town. So we're spraying using the drone, and then we use also pitting without marking. It's an engineering system where we don't have to mark. We just use the MPET to pit the area to plant, and then the only time that human walk in the compartment will be when there is a planting. They are following then the dozer system, which I'm going to take you through. Why we have to do it? Health and safety, economics, productivity improvement, and cost efficiency. Because instead of having a person carrying 16 liters of water or 16 liters of a gel up and down the slope under difficult ground environments, so we needed to come up with a solution that is going to ease the preservation. Next, please. Okay, so this is where it starts. It starts from the compartment planning through mapping. So we use the technology drone. So you get the pictures, then it will give you a clear picture of the ground roughness and what system you need to do. We plan together with Mondi in terms of what system we're going to apply them. And then from there, we do the risk assessment of the whole operation from spraying up to planting. As you can see, this is just a picture. On the side, this is on the map on this side, you will see this is where the lines, the flight plane, where the drone is going to be flying for that particular operation. So this is in the planning phase. Yep. Next. So how do we prepare? We prepare the areas. We do the spraying using the drone, DJI T30 Agras with IAS integrated aerial spraying. So with this system, there are no slope limitations. It's very cost effective. The data you get is accurate. How much water you sprayed, how many chemicals on the ground that you've put. And then you cannot, when you have to compare it with the people, it's just that you cannot compare both. A day, on a good day, you do plus minus 35 hectares. And then it has a possibility it can work at night, the technology. However, we've not gone that far, but it has that possibility if the conditions allow. And then we follow the area spraying with pitting without marking using a single pitting head machine. And then it's an engineering method. It's a 2 days. We work, it's a 2 shifts per day. And also, if you have to compare using manual 5 days per hectare versus 2 hours per hectare. So again, in terms of the costs, it also then comes better than using people. Okay, this is just a clip. If you can play the clip on the left. So as you can see, this is a pre-plant spray operation. And if you could look on the ground, you can see the roughness there, that the conditions are not really good. And then also the safety of the people walking in there. So having the drone eliminates the exposure risk in terms of the safety. So there will be limited times for people to get into them. In actual fact, you only go there in terms of the spraying. You only go there for planting and blanking with human. Then even after the establishment, you carry on using the selective chemicals. On your right, you will see that there is a drone, that is the map. On the green, you can see this is an area that exactly where you've already sprayed. The orange side, it's where it's an area that is not yet been sprayed. So as it happens, it gives you the information. Next slide, please. Then we go to the steep terrain planting operation. So the setup, we use a dozer, and then it's a tracked machine, and it's hydrostatic, meaning it just crawls. So there is no speed that maybe people will be having to rush. The carrying capacity for it is 1,300, and it has a gel mixer. So it mixes the gel itself, and then you can plant with 4 people. So now all of a sudden you have a team of 7, 2 for seedlings and then 1 for sorting station. And it can then go up to 35% slope. Whereas our wheeled tractor, it's a 15% slope limitations. So this one is giving you 20% more to area to cover modernized. For precautions, it's way better to work under the bent area just to avoid the debris for safety of the people. So we prefer to bend, and then a shift you can do up to 4 hectares. But again, we'll engage also the future innovations with the machine. So if you can play the clip again on this one on your left. So this is the operation of the planting. This is a planting operation with the dozer, and then you can see at the same time the pitting happening on the far left. So it's a one-pass system. You get in, you get out, and you have less people compared in the old method. In the old days, where you need to have maybe 20 people or so in that operation or more. So in this one, you can pit and plant on the same day. And then this is the results that we got from them on that compartment that we were planting. If you look at the stocking per hectare, survival versus planted, uniformity. So it shows you that it is a effective system, because even in your results after planting, you get a very good survival. Next slide, please. Then now to compare just in a high level, if you look at the quality, there is no issue planting with a backpack. So in terms of the quality, so the backpack, dozer, versa planter, drone, MSEC, so everything ticks. However, if you go back to safety and economics, you can see that the backpack to go up and down in the slope, rocky areas, then the people there, even if you interview them, you feel that they get home very, very tired. But with the dozer, they just follow the dozer. And then slope limitations, again, of course, there is no slope for people limitation, but for those and the Vasa planner, we do have the slope limitations, which is a challenge on that one. Then the labor intensive, the backpack, like I said before, the to go up and down with a chemical or gel with the plants, and then planting tool up and down, it's very labor demanding. And then in terms of the soils, with the dozer and machines, if you put them at the wrong side, then you have a risk of compaction. So we also, from planning point of view, from the planning, we do that and check what system we're going to apply. We have to check everything. And then also with the harvesting residue, the limitation with the dozer and the tractor is that if you have a high residue, you run a risk of the logs hitting the people behind the machines. So, and then this system has been successfully implemented on the steep slope where traditional two-wheel tractor systems cannot access. And then the future for us is to put the Vasa planter onto the dozer, so that there is no need even for the MPER to go there. So you improve your single pass. You just get in there, do your pitching, marking, and planting at one go. So that is the future plan. And also the other plan, there is a head that we investigating. We have a trip that is going to go to Chile, where it's a planting head that can be mounted on the excavator. So we looking into that, and then on that one, it's repeats, plant and fertilize. So again, it's to limit the number of people going in high risk areas. So because of our environment, we are always looking at solutions to modernize the steep slope. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Shweni, for that interesting presentation. And I must say, what is interesting about what you mentioned is the issue of it's not only just taking technology and applying it, but you are also taking the responsibility of assessing the growth, the survival, as well as the uniformity of using those technologies, which is quite important. So I think what you are involved in is also leading in terms of, yes, we have traditionally been focused on flatter areas with the technologies that are there, but it's now, what do we do when we get to the steeper areas, which is quite often majority of the areas that we will face in forestry across the world. So thank you for that presentation. We are now going to move on to our next presentation. And I'm going to now introduce Mr. Sam Twala. Mr. Sam Twala obtained his bachelor's degree in electronic engineering from the University of Pretoria way back in 2008. And his focus was on unmanned aircraft systems. He graduated with merit as a Master of Aviation from Marseille University in 2016. He worked for the South African Civil Aviation Authority in 2011 as a certification engineer, and later joined the Unmanned Aircraft Systems Department as an Unmanned Aircraft Systems Specialist. Amongst others, his responsibilities included the development of the remotely piloted aircraft systems regulations and the technical standards for remote piloted aircraft systems, also known as drones. Sam has served as a special advisor to the South African member of the International Civil Aviation Organization, Unmanned Aircraft System Study Group, and later served as a member of RAPAS panel, from its inception until 2016. He has also served as a member of the Joint Authorities for the Rulemaking of Unmanned Systems for 4 years. He has also worked as a senior systems engineer of communications, surveillance, and navigation systems at Air Traffic and Navigation Systems. He is a recipient of the 2015 European UVS International Catherine Fagan Award. Sam is a founder and managing director of NTSU Aviation Solution and NTSU Drone Academy. Today, Mr. Twala will be exploring the interesting topic of application of drones in forestry. We are looking forward to you sharing your expertise, especially on the technical and legal framework of how drones can be applied in forestry. I'm going to hand over to you, Mr. Twala. Looking forward to it. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Doctor, and good morning to everyone who's listening. Hopefully, you can hear me clearly. If you could just confirm, fantastic. Let me, in the meantime, share my screen. I must say I really enjoyed the presentation by Muedanyi while I'm getting my presentation up and running here. Let's see. It seems to be a little bit slow, but it will get there. And the reason why I really liked his presentation, it really talks to my presentation, or what I'm going to talk about, today, of which is when it comes to the application of drone technology in this industry. You know, the advantages are unparalleled, and we cannot even have a conversation or debate about whether or not technology, but it's just a matter of optimizing and making sure that the drone technology are used optimally in this industry. Doctor, if you could just confirm for me if you can see my slides.
Yes, they are all clear. You can go ahead.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much again for that introduction. I'll get straight into it. Some other slides, I'm not going to spend too much time. One of them being this one, because you've already covered that as far as my background and where I come from. I'll spend about a minute or so in talking about incubation solution, just an introduction, just giving a broad overview who's into aviation solutions and what that we do. So as into aviation, there are actually two entities. One is into aviation solutions, and then the other one is into Drone Academy. So under into aviation solutions, what we specialize in is the compliance. You know, compliance in a sense that people like Muedanyi who would see the application, the real benefits of using drone technology. The reality is you still need to get approval from the Civil Aviation Authority, simply because from Civil Aviation Authority point of view, a drone, once you get into drones, you are in aviation, and what you say and how you walk and everything must be in accordance with how she would like to see things. And one of the biggest challenges with that is you find that people are experts in their areas of they know very well about in the area of expertise, but when it comes to CA, it becomes a little bit tricky and difficult, and that's where we come in. We normally what we do is when you have your idea as far as being able to operate drones, and then we facilitate a conversation with the regulator, and it goes beyond that. Especially the process would be very much different when you have a conversation with an entrepreneur or a relatively small organization compared to a very large organization. But the challenge with a large conversation is the introduction. You know, how do you implement the program can be quite complicated. And also because in most instances, when you talk about a large corporates, it also include talk about multiple applications. So that's what we do. And then the other most important thing is, which is where this industry is today, and we're looking at getting to the next step, is to date, from the civil aviation point of view, everything is still paper-based. And now we need to find a way to move to a digitized, operations airspace, including regulations as well. So that's quite important and fundamental, especially if you're looking at massifying the drone industry and making sure that the access becomes easier, and from regulator point of view, things are easier. Managing the airspace, things are much easier. And then the other thing would be the supply of drone technology, including the what we also do is pilot training, including the maintenance technician. So what I want to touch on before I move on is where are we in the drone industry? So back in 2015, which is when drone regulations were promulgated, I always say that, being at that point, just having an approval from the regulator, it used to be a very lucrative business, simply because everyone was looking at getting into drones. But at the time, very, very few people understood regulations. Very few people had obtained their licenses from the regulator. And the industry is evolving in a sense that around about 2018, it was not just about having a license, but it was also about being able to extract the useful information, after, from that picture, from that video, which is exactly what Dumisani was presenting now. That's the evolution of drone industry. It's not only about having a license, or obtaining your license, or getting a drone, but it's all about offering a value to your clients. And then the next one being enterprise integration. With enterprise, with larger organizations, and with large organizations, if I can make one example with, let's say, for example, with a security industry, having a drone up in the sky for surveillance purposes is not good enough, because the bottom line is, you have an outcome, there's an objective that you'd like to achieve. So, and how you'd want to do that, it works quite well or better if you are able to integrate drones with all other within your processes, as including other processes, such as a drone cannot be a standalone solution. It must be integrated with whatever that you already have on the ground. And then the next thing would be, which is where we are now and going forward. There's a bit of intelligence that now leads to drones. They need to have some kind of intelligence. One of the things where, or the applications where I've seen this quite a lot is, I work a lot with emergency services in the Western Cape. And one of the applications when they do search and rescue, it's quite tedious, most probably not so effective as well. When they say, for example, they're looking for someone who's lost, or probably someone who's injured, flying a drone, it makes it easier, it makes it better if, that drone does a bit of intelligence where it will be able to do its search and be able to differentiate between a human being and a dog, as an example. So that's where we are currently. Now,
sorry, Mr. Twala.
Yes, sir.
Just, it seems as if there's a black thing that's covering some parts of your slides. I think it's the Teams viewer. That
the top part, right?
Yes, and the bottom right-hand side corner.
I'm not sure about the right. The top one, is it still there?
No, it's gone. It's gone.
Okay. And the bottom one?
The bottom one is still there.
I cannot see anything on my side as far as anything at the bottom.
Okay, no, that's fine. That's fine. We can manage. At least we can see it on the top. You can proceed.
No, apologies for it. All right, thank you. All right. Most probably it's gone now.
Yes, it's gone. It's gone. Thank you.
All right, fantastic. Thank you. It just disappeared as well, or on my side. All right, thank you. So what I actually wanted to talk about now today is, try to measure the conversation as far as in forestry, what type of applications that the industry is looking at getting into as far as the operations which are quite prevalent today, and those ones which are sort of in a rise. Now, I want to talk about that, combining that conversation with regulatory challenges. Now, what you see here, these are some of applications in drone applications in forestry. You do have long endurance type of applications. Now, with the long endurance, I'm talking about operations where with a drone we are able to get to range, beyond 20 kilometers. Now looking at 50 kilometers and 100 kilometers, which is a real application as far as forestry are concerned. And then reforestation, I think also that's one component that Dumisan was also talking about, including the crop spraying. The crop spray, including operations which would be, for example, whether it's a LiDAR operations, whether it's above or under canopy. Now, these two applications, they've been quite tricky as far as from the regulations point of view. One of the applications that the industry is looking at when it comes to crop spraying, if you look at the latest technology, DJI technology, they are provision technical capability for these drones to be able to operate. Multiple drones can be operated from one controller. Now, that on its own, it offers operators a big and a huge opportunity and benefits, in a sense that as currently regulations are saying one controller, one drone. Now, what that means is simply, and the limitation to the industry is, it means for 5 drone applications or operations, you need 5 pilots. And salaries in drone applications or operations, it's one of the big expense. So what you want to do is, with that technological advance, it offers that opportunity. But now, if you look at the regulations, they are quite specific and prohibiting such application. One of the application I was talking about here, if you're looking at maybe LiDAR operations under canopy, the tricky part with that is, which is what I'm going to talk about in the next slide. In terms of this operation, there's always been a question, and this, by the way, I would also add operations underground. There's always been conversations and questions from the industry to the CEA or just amongst industry operators to say, when you operate a drone under canopy, is that operation, does that fall under civil aviation regulation? Meaning you still need to go, obtain all other approvals, or the compliance process is exactly the same as any other person who's flying, for example, for security surveillance. So those are important questions. To date, there are different views, there are different opinions, even internally, if when you have conversations with the regulator, quite a complicated process as well. Operations such as your electro-optic, and then your including a multispectral aerial data, fire detection. Now, with the fire detection, we are currently also working with a developer of a payload, which you're able to do fire detection, as early as possible. As you will understand that with forestry, the problem is, fire. The key to that is the early detection. If you lose a couple of minutes there, you may end up losing the entire forest simply because of you may not able to detect that quite early. So what we are looking at, the type of drones which will be for like your long endurance type of drones, if we are able to fit the nice payload, which you'll be able to do fire detection, and with the fire detection, you're able to even give the exact location and then coordinates to be able to dispatch or to react to be able to put out that fire. And then the other obvious one would be for security operation. Now, the last part that the last point that I just want to mention here with these slides, I just want to highlight one of the most asked question in this industry, to say, as a farmer, if you take a drone and you operate a drone over your farmland or over your property, you still have to go through the entire process of obtaining your ROC, which is your RPAS operator certificate, and all other certificates that you require. So unfortunately, if you look at legislation as is today, the answer is yes. The only person or the only operation where one would be exempted from going as far as obtaining all other operations would be if it's private operation. And these are the definition as far as what private operation is. And you can see there, if you using a drone for crop spraying, whereas for security application, even if it's your private property, that doesn't fall under private operation, because You know, it's not necessarily for personal enjoyment, but there's one way or the other, you know, a linkage to a commercial or interest or gain. So in that instance, then the right license to obtain there would be your corporate aviation. Now, with this slide, I'm not going to spend too much time on the slide, but just to give an indication that today, if you go to Civil Aviation Authority and say, I want to operate drones, you know, all these blocks here, they represent certificate or a license of sort that you need to obtain. And as you can see, it's quite cumbersome. And as I was mentioning earlier, for someone particularly who has never been in aviation or doesn't even have an interest to get into aviation, but you're looking at using a drone as a tool to, you know, to apply within your organization or start a new business or venture or anything of that sort. So this can become quite cumbersome and quite you know, difficult in a sense that, you know, time it takes to get that license is quite long. Two, the costs which may be associated with getting your license might be quite hefty at the same time. So where we are now as an industry and as the regulator, where things should be going forward, we have the categorization currently, the grouping and classification within Part 1.1, which are our regulations, which is what I depicted here. Now, this categorization does not really work for the industry as it is today. So we need to, as a country, and some other countries, they already started moving toward the right direction. So about 3-4 years ago, ICAO, which is the International Civil Aviation Organization, they came up with a categorization which would sort of suit the drone industry. And our regulations were promulgated in 2015. This new way of categorizing drones and making regulations to be more friendlier when it comes to drone operations, as a country, we haven't really caught up or moved towards the right direction. Yes, the conversations are happening, the conversations are taking place, but not at the correct speed or the right speed for us to move. For example, if you look at in Europe, you know, they've adopted a different way of categorizing or classifying drones, which is category A, B, and C. And that works quite well. For some of, especially when you look at applications in forestry, the examples that I showed earlier, most operations would fall under category A. Why category A is, from the regulator point of view, the question that they are asking is the operation itself, or when they are making that assessment, you know, as far as the regulations which would be suitable for whatever the type of application that we're talking about, is they start looking at regulations to be operation centric. And then what does that mean is the regulations, or whether regulations must be you know, stringent or less stringent, you know, it depends on the application. So, for example, the application that I was talking about, if you're operating drones, and this would be a LiDAR operation under Keynote. Now, the question that one could ask yourself is, as far as that application is concerned, you know, what aviation risks are we talking about there? And when we talk about aviation risk, generally we talk about 3 categories. One being risk to third parties, 2, risk to property or structures, and 3, risk to other airspace users. Now, in most applications, particularly in forestry, you'll find that the risk, as far as if you look at those 3 pillars, will always be minimal. And now, if risk is minimal, it then means when we look at the current process for one to be able to get a license, you know, it becomes an overkill. So regulations, one way or the other, they need to be proportionate. And the only unfortunate part as well is when we change the regulations and we look at the requirements from operations point of view, what we're also opening up, which is another challenge that we may be dealing with, is regulations, or at least from the regulator point of view, the process must be systematic. Systematic in the sense that when you have 2 similar applications with both with low risk, you know, the process, or at least the compliance part, must be basically the same, or at least must be close to each other. And then regulations must be practical. Why practical? Today, if you talk to most drone operators, those who already have like their licenses and those who are already in the process of obtaining the license, you know, there's always a question about the practicality. as far as the regulations are concerned. And one way or the other, we need to find a way that to be practical in our applications, and practical in a sense, again, going back to, if the risk, the aviation risk is less, then it should be less of a worry from the regulator point of view. And the last one would be, the regulations must be cost conscious. Most people don't even, or they will start the process, of obtaining license until they find out that the costs that is involved in obtaining your own license, they become prohibitive. And simply because also the equipment that you want to purchase, the personnel that you need. So the process ends up being just too costly, to a point where we end up with a situation that we have today, which is people just end up saying, what, forget about regulations, just do what you have to do, catch me if you can, kind of approach. So this is something also that needs to be taken into account. So this is what I would call things that needs to be embedded into regulations if we are to get to the position where we're saying we have regulations which work for the industry regardless of the industry that you are in. That should be all. Thank you very much, Doctor. I'm not sure if you're taking any questions or if we would have time for that. But thank you very much. That will be the end of my presentation.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Twala. The presentation was very, very informative. And I must say that there's still, I would say, there's still a development and the process of figuring things out as we are moving on. And it's important that there is a fair balance between the opportunities as well as legislation, so that we don't over regulate, but also ensure that all the other things that need to be in place for responsible drone applications are in place. But thank you for giving us that full perspective through your presentation. We will have questions just after the next presentation. So we just a reminder to our attendees that we have a Q&A session at the end. And if you have any questions based on any of the presentations, please just indicate that you are directing this question to this presenter and what your question is, and we will pose those questions to our different presenters at the end of this first session. And now we are going to move on to our next presentation. And I'm going to introduce to you Mr. Michael Brisket from Swift Geospatial, and he holds a BSc in Geography degree from the University of Pretoria. And he has been involved in GIS and remote sensing for the last 15 years. And he basically started Swift Geospatial back in 2016. And the main focus was the use or application of satellite imagery, which he had a good knowledge of. Today, Swift Geospatial has a major focus on forestry, both in the natural environment as well as commercial forestry. And during his spare time, Michael enjoys football, and he is trying not to get upset with Manchester United. So, Michael, I hope your blood pressure is still all right there. So Mr. Brisket will be taking us on a journey of how to use satellite imagery to monitor forest operations. Michael, thank you very much, and I am going to hand over to you. Looking forward to it.
Excellent. Thank you very much for the introduction. I think blood pressure is always a problem when Manchester United plays. I know they've got a game tonight against Tottenham, so probably thoroughly expecting another boring draw or something like that. But that's not why we are here today. We could talk about football forever, but we're going to be discussing forestry modernization, what we specialize in at Swift, and how that helps the forestry industry, with a bit more of a focus on commercial forestry industry today. So I'm just going to share my screen quickly and then pull up my presentation. Okay, perfect. So yes, using satellite imagery to monitor forest operations with the theme of modernization. So, you know, we can kind of keep that at the background to ascertain, and I will jump in and out. When we think of the theme of modernization, what does it actually mean? Is it modernization in the form of how do we get the data, or is it modernization in the form of the source of data, the resolution of data, or is modernization in the form of how do we process that data? So I'll touch on a couple of those points as we go along. But just for a little brief introduction of who Swift is, in case you haven't been harassed by me via email or LinkedIn as of yet. Swift started in 2016. We are not foresters at all. In fact, we don't have any foresters in our team. We are all environmental remote sensing GIS experts. But the idea of Swift was to always move into modernization. So for us, it was the company starting in 2016, but now looking towards 2022, where are we and how have we modernized and provide the services to our clients, primarily in the forestry aspect. I won't go into any of these dates, but I think the real key here is moving to a single source, one-stop shop, where everything can be retrieved from the actual client. We've got a footprint mainly in Africa, Australia, New Zealand, and Indonesia. We've been working with a lot of commercial forestries in that part of the globe. We wouldn't be where we are today if we didn't have partners, and partners are really important. We'll touch on that as well with regards to Esri, Maxar, Planet, and some of our key kind of forestry clients around the globe. But this is kind of really important starting slide when we're talking about forestry monitoring using satellite imagery. And when we're talking about modernization, is that you need to decide to yourself, where do you want to be? What do you want to achieve? And how do you get there? So why did we as Swift decide to choose satellite imagery instead of aerial fixed wing craft or drones, or which are excellent sources of remote sensing? But for us, it was looking at forestry in hard to reach areas. So if you're looking at commercial forestry, generally it's spread out over large areas. If you're looking at natural forestry, it can be even half of countries, right? So for us, it was about how do we get the best information for those areas. So for us, it was then to move into the next block on the right there called satellite technology. So it was a mixture of satellite technology. So whether we're using Sentinel, Planet, or Maxar, which I'll touch on again a little bit later, we needed to access data for hard to reach areas and for very large areas. And then we needed to be able to process that data in such a manner that we weren't doing it on our local machines. We weren't sitting taking time. It needed to be fast and quick, and it needed to be scalable, right? So we can move from maybe a small plantation of 50,000 hectares in West Africa or East Africa, and then decide to monitor 500,000 hectares in South Africa, right? So how does that work? How do you leverage that satellite information in order to be able to scale from something that's relatively small into something that's relatively large and not lose any time doing it? How do we get that data, and how do we process that data? So moving into a cloud-based scenario makes perfect sense for that. And then once again, partners and collaborations are really important for us. So moving into having a good understanding of technology, of software that can help us get there. And then finally, with regards to remote sensing, modernization, satellites, everything like that, the final product isn't to tell you yes or no. The final product is to provide decision support. So using remote sensing in any form, or using GIS in any form, is just a tool. So think of somebody, a carpenter or a construction worker, they have various tools in their tool belt. And this is just another one of those tools. It's not there to replace people going out to the field. It's not there to replace forest managers or anything like that. It's there to assist, to help as best as possible for you to make better decisions. And that is what we're talking about when we're talking about modernization. It's incorporating all types of information and data, and then making a decision with it, providing that support in order to better provide you with information, decisions, and hopefully improve the bottom line. So for us in particular, our journey to modernization and forestry was to partner with Esri. So most of you, I'm sure that you know Esri. Esri is probably the world's largest GIS company in the world, software provider. And so we needed to get onto image server. We needed to do enterprise server, these types of things. And this allowed us, in order to process data quickly, to share data with our clients. So having partners in this space is obviously really, really important. But what's more important than having the partners is having access to data. Right? Because if you don't have access to data, you can't see what's happening on the ground. And if you can't see what's happening on the ground, you can't provide decision support. So at Swift, we decided to settle on 3 sources of data. So the first image that you see here is from a satellite called Sentinel. This is at Sentinel-2, so it's a 10-meter resolution, and it's a color image. And basically, the nice thing about using Sentinel is that it's free. So everybody that's listening to me now can hop on, download any Sentinel anywhere. And this image gets updated every 5 days. So if you've got a large plantation and you're happy with this type of a resolution because you're looking for an overview, you can get access to Sentinel and you can process your own data at no cost. And so that was one tier of data that we needed to get access to, was free data, because not everyone is in a fortunate position to have a lot of money to spend on data. Then moving forward is a more commercial-based satellite. So what you see here is a 3-meter resolution image from a satellite provider called Planet. Now, the nice thing about Planet, and I've got a little video to show you a little bit later, is that it takes a picture of the Earth every single day. So every single day, the entire landmass of the Earth is collected at 3-meter resolution. So think of really high important areas. Think of harvesting, think of infield stress, think of defining new road networks, think of disasters, fire, post disaster fire. How did the fire spread? If we're taking a picture of the world every day, we can tell you where the fire started, how it spread, how much damage was occurred at a 3-meter resolution. And then finally, for other applications within forestry, this here is at a 30-centimeter resolution. So this is all taken from satellite. This is commercial from Maxar, and higher resolution, 50 centimeter, offers a whole heap of other value-added benefits, such things as now we can do a little bit of species identification. We can take stereo imagery of your entire plantation and deduce heights, your mean, max, and average heights of your tree heights, tree counting, tree survival. So using higher resolution satellite information now, 30 centimeters, provides you with another layer of information, once again, all towards decision support. And here's just a slide just comparing, so everybody can kind of get an understanding. The top section is your free 10-meter resolution. Then your bottom right, or on my side, my bottom right anyways, is your 3-meter resolution, and then moving across to your 30-centimeter resolution. So these are typical of the satellites that we can get access to, that most people can get access to. Once again, the benefits is that you can take large areas, right? You can take your entire plantation in one go and collect it daily if you really wanted to. The main talk of us is that modernization, and really a real field where modernization has headed is this planet. Because you're taking the picture of the day of your plantations of the world every single day, it offers you more data than you know what to do with. But using that data for harvesting or something along those lines is really, really important. So the next slide is just a video of Planet, introducing Planet.
The world is always changing. Industries expand and develop. Trees grow and disappear. People transition and settle. Change is everywhere. Change is daily. We just haven't been able to see it until now. By imaging the whole planet every day, Planet makes the constantly changing world visible and accessible, transforming forever the way we make decisions about our resources, our business, our planet, and ourselves. For the first time, Planet enables action at a global scale, and we empower others to build ideas and solutions that are still being imagined with our information at your fingertips. And the world's creativity, the possibilities are limitless. Planet. See change. Change the world.
Now immediately I'm thinking to myself, that's overkill. Who needs to have a picture of forestry on a daily basis? You know, a tree grows every 7 or 20 years, and you need to cut it down for harvesting. So how do we leverage that? How do we take all of that data and put it into a facet, or put it into something that does all the heavy lifting for clients, it does all the heavy lifting for everybody else? So I don't need to see a picture of my plantation every day, but it would be nice to tell me where potential post-fire disaster has occurred, where encroachment is occurring, where illegal logging is occurring. Harvesting. Have they harvested the right compartment? Are they harvesting the correct compartment? How much harvesting has occurred? Where? And by using Planet on a daily basis, you can put all of that information into one single source. And so when we're moving to the idea of modernization, once again, isn't how we collect the data, it's what you do with the data and how you process all of that together and how you put it into a single shop. We're coming up with the idea of this geospatial forestry platform, where it puts everything into one place and everybody can get access to that and choose what they want, when they want to have it done by. Maybe it's weekly, maybe it's monthly, maybe it's daily. But that's the idea of modernization, is moving towards something that is easily obtainable, achievable. You don't need to be a GIS or remote sensing expert to understand what's happening where. And then displaying the data in an easy to use manner. Right? I mean, too often data or data analytics and remote sensing can get very flustered because you're not necessarily a specialist in it, but everybody now knows how to use a map, up, down, left, right. They know how to zoom in and out. So if you could put that data and that information that's being collected by a remote sensing source, and even whether it be a drone, that's great. How do you put that into a manner where it's easily? So how can I track the health of my forest? Where's the planting good or bad? Where are all my species? What's the slope? What's my volume? And you put it into a visual dashboard, something similar to what's on the screen here that we did for a company in Uganda, and understand, have that information at your fingertips. This is modernization, in our opinion, is moving all of the data sources into one easy to use environment. So what do we do with all of this data that comes in? You know, climate change scenarios, site species matching tool, where to plant the best tree, to understand survival, right? So if I'm growing Grandis, for argument's sake, where areas that we grew Grandis maybe 10, 20 years ago, are they still the best areas to grow them now? You know, do we take climate scenario changes into consideration? Where must I plant a certain type of species, you know, to understand what's happening where and give me the best chance of survival. Monitoring, imagery, network analysis, all of these type of things now provide that modernization that wasn't necessarily all there back in the day, where it is now. So it's just some examples just to end off by using remote sensing technologies and how it's progressed is tree survival counts, generally done at kind of 6 months, 2 years before canopy closure, ascertaining how many trees are still alive and areas where trees could have been planted that weren't planted, giving you an understanding of volume moving forward, what to expect out of certain plantations. Straightforward harvesting done on a weekly basis. Where's harvesting occurring? Is it in the right compartment? Are my contractors that have gone out to harvest come back to get paid? Is the harvest done? Is the area completely harvested or not? Or have they left out a section? Or maybe they've gone across to an area where they shouldn't be. So keeping an eye on that and understanding how much is harvested where and at what time. Looking at things like in-field stress, and pest or disease, and whether it be baboon damage along those lines, or in this case, red ants in South America. Where did it start? How's it spreading within my compartments? Not just the general compartment, it's now going inside. And taking a picture of your entire plantation, we can pick this type of information up now and ascertain areas. Once again, decision support, right? So go look here, go look there to try and stop these things from spreading. And then species identification, you know, height, volumes, using additional spectral bands, which I won't go into now. Can we identify genus? Can we identify where eucalyptus is, where pine is? Can we use that technology to say for small growers up in Africa, or even in South Africa, where do you have small grower plantations for pine and eucalyptus, so that the bigger boys can maybe access that for their own requirements. So think of modernization as trying to get all of this data into one place and then to try and use all of that data for decision support. My last slide after this is just a video just to end off on, which kind of summarizes a lot of what I've said today. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you so much, Michael. That is a very interesting presentation. And I think what is so good about what you indicated was the issue of we have the data, but it's now the application and how to derive the maximum value from the information that is available. And just from observing, there's multiple uses which can then support decision making and help foresters on the ground to make real-time decisions, to be able to execute action plans to prevent further damage or to be able to apply corrective measures quite early. So thank you very much for that presentation. We are now going to move on to our question and answers. So I will ask our presenters to please just have your cameras on. And what I will do is I will be posing the questions as the attendees have posted them, and then you can then just respond as needed. If the question is sort of a general one, then anyone can respond, but if it's dedicated to a specific individual, I will then indicate that please respond accordingly. All right, so let's start with our first one. This one is for Mr. Dumisani Shweni. I'm not sure if his camera is on yet. I don't see him here. So Mr. Shweni, if you can just put it on so that you can respond. He says, I would like to pose a question to Mr. Dumisani Shweni. That question is now vanished from my screen. Okay, I'm just going to come back here and say, okay. All right, okay, there I see. I would like to pose a question to Mr. Dumisani Shweni. How do they maintain their drones and how do they source their parts locally or abroad?
Can you hear me, Doc?
Yes, I can hear you, but your camera seems not to be showing.
We have got some load shedding, so the network is being a little bit affected.
Okay, but I can hear you.
Okay. Now, basically, we do have a support from Pexis. Pexis is where we purchased our drones. So basically, we have a backup support that is local. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for that response. Then there is also another question. What is the lifespan of their different drones? Meaning, are they maintained like the cars that they have a motor plan? Anybody perhaps wants to respond to the lifespan of drones?
Maybe Mr. Twala can respond better, but it's more about when you're working them. It's lifespan also depends on how much you're working with them. So they can service like the vehicles, and then also we have like I said, with PEXs, some of the things we do with them in terms of the service, the major stuff, but basically they are more like a vehicle in the air. But however, it depends how often you use it.
Okay, another one for you, Tubisani. How effective is full cover spray weeding after planting using drones, considering factors such as wind drift and risk of plant scorching?
Basically, after we've planted, when we do the area spray, we use the selectives. So selective registered selective chemicals for aerial spraying. So you use the chemical that you know that where you're spraying, it will not affect the crop that you are spraying. And also with the mapping of the drone, it's actually accurate, and we fly just above 3 meters of the plant. So the wind factor is always taken in consideration in terms of how is that. But if you really get a drift from the drone because of the accuracy, because it also pushes as it sprays, it pushes the chemical down.
This one is for you, Damien. It's a comment, but perhaps you can also comment. It says tray management is always a challenge between nurseries and field operations. I believe the QR code tracking system will minimize the number of missing trays during nursery tray consolidation. It says, thanks, Damien. Do you want to maybe perhaps comment on that?
Yeah, absolutely, Muedanyi. It's definitely seen as a gap in the logistic chain on how we get trays back quickly and to the right amount. And the QR code will definitely help with that tray consolidation.
Okay, thanks for that. There's also a general comment here. It says the work done in silviculture operations incorporating technology in this high level is quite impressive. Thank you for sharing your work. There's another question. This goes back to, I suppose, to Misani. What is the average cost per hectare for real chemical spraying and mechanical planting with a dozer?
So basically, if we look at the dozer first, the comparison that you can do there, you get 2 productive hours per hectare, 2 to 2.5. And then if you to compare that with the original method, the traditional method, so to say, you have to use about 4 to 5 units per hectare. So then you have to multiply then by your rates. And then also with the same thing with the drone. A drone, you do a hectare with 9 minutes plus minus 9 minutes. You finish your hectare, then you will be you'll be costing as per your rate in terms of the I cannot give you the numbers, but you can contact me aside.
Okay, thank you. Here's one for Mr. Twala. Is he still in? Mr. Twala, you there? Okay.
Yes, I'm back.
There's one for you. Does your company lease out drones? If yes, what are the requirements? Do I need to have a qualified pilot? Do I have to be a qualified pilot to operate the drone, or do they have to? Do they have an option of also leasing out a pilot? Where in South Africa, in terms of laws to utilize drones for overall deliveries and other services?
That's quite a loaded question, I must say.
Yes.
All right. But starting with leasing, unfortunately, on our side, we are not. And I would then sort of go back to regulatory challenges. You know, if you look at what I would call traditional aviation, there are provisions for leasing an aircraft, but when it comes to drones, there's no such. You know, they don't make provisions for leasing. So, however, there are ways of how you could do that, but it end up becoming too cumbersome, and especially for whoever who may be looking at leasing out the drones, or whoever who may be looking at renting out that drone. So it's not possible today, and I would say mainly to be because of regulations are not really making that possible. So those are some of the things that going forward, hopefully the regulator will look at that and see how best to address them. And then in terms of deliveries, again, it sort of goes back to another challenge with our legislation, but now more on the access to airspace. You know, one of the main reasons why we still don't have, as far as I remember, the only operator that has the approval to do deliveries is South African National Blood Services. And even themselves, they're very, very limited in what they can do because, you know, the operation is limited between one hospital and one blood bank. And the main reason being the access to airspace. You know, how we manage drones in the airspace for long distance operations. That's where traffic and navigation services, they still need to come up with provisions for that, which is again what I was talking about. Until we get to a position where we have digitized you know, airspace regulations, including from the operations, you know, that will remain a dream that may never be realized until we get to that point. So there are still legislative challenges to be able to see the widespread of, you know, drone deliveries. It's possible, however, there will be limitations because from the civil aviation regulations point of view, you would be able to go to CA and have conversation with them, but you'll still be limited as far as what you'll be able to get. They could exact services.
Thanks, Sam, for that. Perhaps Michael, just to bring you in, and I think you touched on this in your presentation. The person asks here, Alan Jella, what is limiting us from modernizing survival and stocking counts? Perhaps you can comment on that because you touched on it on your side.
Sorry, if you could just repeat the question, or I can't see it here on the question list.
Okay, he asked, Alan Keller asked, what is limiting us from modernizing survival and stocking counts?
Yeah, I mean that's a good question, and unfortunately from us there's no magic bullet, right? So the limitations really in our case and what the satellite can provide that, but when a compartment reaches canopy closure, then the results, the accuracy take a bit of a nosedive because it is still very, very difficult to distinguish from a remote sensing, from a satellite remote sensing point of view, kind of individual tree crowns. So really what you want to do is ascertain how many trees were planted inside a compartment when the contractor went out to plant the trees, and then do a count at about 6 months when they start to kind of obviously grow a little bit. From there, you can do your first initial count at 6 months to ascertain how many trees are still there, and then the final count before canopy closure, depending on the species, but roughly around about 2 years to ascertain exactly how many trees are left over. You can do individual health then at that stage of each tree to ascertain within a compartment which trees are doing better than others, which will then give you a indication of I initially planted 1,000 trees and I'm now sitting at 800. Or areas within your compartment that aren't doing as well as others. But limitations will always be there when we're using satellite information, because it's also down to kind of interpretation, right? So even through machine learning or AI or any other kind of fancy notions or terms you want to throw at it, you're only as good as the data that you can get in. So if you can fly that compartment, for argument's sake, with a drone at 5 centimeter resolution, then the results obviously be a lot better. Satellite, think of satellite technology and think of satellite imagery as looking at things that are more for a larger kind of scale, not necessarily for individual compartments, but you want to do a whole region or something like that. But limitations will unfortunately always be there.
Thanks for that response. There is one, perhaps I'm gonna bring you in back, Damien. Are there weather conditions required to grow plants using paper pots in nurseries for efficient survival and growth? That's from Tsepo.
Thanks, Tsepo, for that question. There's not really any limitations. It just depends what type of greenhouse tunnel you grow in. So if you're growing under plastic, it should be very similar to your plastic trays, except that you might need to change the way you water. So in the past, if you watered on a set schedule, you might change the way you water depending on your moisture content. So you can apply the same amount of water you do per tray per day. You just have to do it in different intervals compared to how you would irrigate a plastic tray. If you're growing under open conditions, so there's no plastic tunnel or cover, then it is a little bit more challenging, but most nursery managers are fairly skilled enough to adjust their irrigation system to cater for it.
Thanks for that response. And this is one that we quite often get whenever we talk about technology modernization, and it's dedicated to Dumisani Shweni. It says modernization reduces opportunities for more employment in rural areas, given that forestry is the main employer in rural areas. Does communities around the area where you operate accept modernization? Secondly, what methods do you use to absorb the pressure from communities when you introduce modern technology in silviculture? And there is one that is also linking to this, wherein it says the adoption of new technologies will inevitably lead to a reduction in employment opportunities as work gets done faster and more efficiently. The second quarter unemployment rate in South Africa was 33.9%. The forestry industry is a major employer in rural areas, and by employing new technology, one runs the risk of contributing to unemployment, as creating the risk of pushback by communities against technology that is putting them out of work. Also, the risk of physical damage to growing stock through arson and theft. Against that backdrop, how does one employ technology in a responsible way to not only meet the company or contractor's needs, but also minimize potential impacts from the communities? So Dumisani, I don't know if you want to just respond to those two combined.
Okay, thanks, Doc. Basically, there is always going to be a pressure always for unemployment. However, our intention to modernize is not more for job losses. However, is to look at the conditions that we operate at. For example, steep slope, because again, for economics, then if you still use a road peak, that job for now is really labor intensive. So by employing technology, it is not only saying that we are reducing people or we are taking jobs away. Again, another thing is with these new technologies, there are opportunities within our own employees, and also as we grow, we develop within our employees. You take, for example, you check your MPET. The operators that we have, it's people that were our employees, and then we train them, then they get there. So as we grow with them. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to take work. However, the working conditions and make to have people who have a decent jobs that they are doing within the forest industry.
Thanks for that. Just to bring you back, Mr. Twala, there's a question here from Nonkulule Kontinga. She says, since operating a drone has a high demand on the pilot's cognitive process, could you highlight at a high level the human factor guidelines that currently need to be in place when applying drones in forest operations?
A very good question. So what I would say is when you do your initial training, your pilot training, there's always a module that is included in training which talks to human performance. However, it would be human performance in general, but eventually it boils down to each operator to be able to take into account the environment that they're operating in. Simply because if you just ignore the human factors or challenges which may be linked with human performance, you're going to end up with a lot of challenges as far as probably it might be some accidents, or you might just not being able to collect the data the right way that if it was done under the right conditions. So that's what I'll mention at this stage. But at least when you go through your training, your product training, you are being sensitized as far as human performance is concerned and limitations and whatnot. But as an operator, you are required, to then localize that, or at least apply that within your operational environment. That's how it works. Because I mean, if you think about different type applications, even outside of forest, they are quite vast for that to be even covered by regulations themselves. So yeah, I would say that's the only way to look at it, and that's how it has been covered within our legislation. Thank you.
All right, thanks for that, Mr. Twala. And just another question from Mr. Bindazwane. He says, how do you get the line straight without marking? I suppose that is for Dumisani with the planting and the drone.
Thanks, Doc. With that one, because we follow because of the re-establishment, so we normally follow the old stamp lines. However, the engineering that is done on the boom. So with that, if you follow the old stamp line, then you are able to get the correct spacing. So the guideline is the old stamp line. Thank you.
All right, some interesting question. I'm going to take the last few questions now, and then I'm just going to combine a few. Damien, if you can respond to this few. Says, Mr. Naidu, I find the virtual measurement of seedlings to be a very interesting topic. I would like to know how accurate this system is. How accurately can we predict what a tree will look like at harvesting age through measuring the seedling? Could this be accurately used in silvicultural and harvesting planning practices? And maybe if we can just hang on that one, I'll just combine it with this one. The first one was from Christian Forges. And then Sinetemba also says, is it possible to use the RPQ and thermal imaging in field outside the nursery to monitor the stress of seedlings and measure growth?
Thanks, Muedanyi. Quite a lot to chew on there. I'll start with answering the second question, and because that's the easier answer. Definitely, you can use the RPQ and thermal imaging in a multitude of different environments. Even if it's not in the nursery, thermal imaging can be used to quantify a variety of factors. So that's definitely possible. With the first question, I'm going to split it up because I believe it's two separate questions. The first one is, how well do the virtual measurements correlate with the ground truth measurements? And we've done some measurements, and it's definitely, you can get it as high as an R² of 85%. So even higher. And then the question lies in which one is more accurate. Is the manual measurement accurate, or is the virtual measurement accurate? And we still have to do some measurements around that. The second part of the question is a little bit more difficult and challenging to answer. So I think it's extremely difficult to correlate measurements in the nursery and predict what that tree performance would be like at harvesting age. You can predict what the survival and early performance is. That's quite easy. We've done that on a multitude of sites. But to predict what it'll be at harvest age very much depends on G/E factors, which is the interaction between genetics and environment. It depends on the climate and how that varies throughout the course of that crop life cycle. It depends on the site quality and what type of nutrition that plant is exposed to or the tree is exposed to. And it also depends on the effect of competition within that stand. So that's a rather complex question and a varying amount of factors that create a lot of noise in order for us to use nursery measurements to predict rotation age performance.
Thanks for that comprehensive response. And then lastly, I'm going to just bring Michael back. And if you can just briefly respond to the following two questions combined. Question for Michael from Senzo: how do you get soil properties and temperatures for a specific area using the drones for species matching? And further on, young Dr. Peko student says, in terms of the GIS, does the GIS face difficulty like inconsistency in data or area limitation? And what are the what challenges do you face?
Perfect. Yeah. So the SSMT, so the site species matching tool, first of all, it's not done using drones, because generally this is done at a country level. And so when we're looking at a country level, so currently it's been done for Kenya, Tanzania, and we're just completing it now in Uganda. So the idea is to provide small scale farmers as well as commercial use farmers and companies an idea of the top, call it 50 commercial species, where to plant, what to plant where, and giving a generalized outcome. So suitable, moderately suitable, or not suitable at all. How that is done is based on various sets of input data. So whether it be climate data for the past 10 years, ascertaining the rainfall, temperature, humidity, we look at slope aspects, we look at the heights of certain of the countries in question, and then we also take the soil maps that generally that the countries have produced at a country level, as well as other various kind of data sets. And then through all of those data sets, combining it, we then create this kind of site species matching tool. What's important to remember with that is that because it's country level, so there's no micro assessments done. All that this is telling you is that if you are in a certain area, these are the 10 best species that we recommend that you plant inside this area based on all of the analytics and based on all of the data that's come in. It's not to say that a certain species might not be able to grow there. We don't know what that particular soil is at that micro level. So once again, in my very initial slide, we're looking at decision support. We can tell you don't plant that tree there because the likelihood of that tree surviving is not high. Decision support. So once again, it's always up to you to take this information to travel further down into it to ascertain, do your micro assessment, soil temperatures or your soil sampling and boring to understand, okay, yes, the soil is suitable for my certain species here. And this kind of flows into the other question, data inconsistency. It's not a GIS problem. It's a problem using any type of remote sensing information. Whether I'm collecting it from 10 centimeters or 5 meters from the ground, or whether I'm collecting it from 500 kilometers from the ground, inconsistencies will always be there. You know, the sensor inconsistencies, wind, atmosphere, atmosphere correction, surface reflectance, all of these type of elements come into it, right? And so there are limiting factors that one can do. So for satellite perspective, we take the climate at that time that the image was taken, and we do surface reflectance, and we do atmospheric correction to try and standardize the imagery day on day or week on week in order to provide a monitoring application, and then using that to provide decision support. Similar with the drone, if you've got a drone with a red edge camera or something like that, it's important to take a picture of your plate before you fly in order to get the atmospheric conditions, the light angles, in order to fly your area and then take another one, right? In order to try and eliminate the inconsistencies and try your best to provide a consistent data set that you can use on and on and on and on. Because when you're looking at monitoring, you need a baseline. You can't just say, okay, I want to monitor and then just see what's there. You need to have a baseline to ascertain what is there or what was there beforehand, and then use that baseline, use that consistent. Whether that data is slightly inconsistent, it's okay. But if you then collect data moving forward, you try and make it consistent as possible. And so those are kind of the challenges, but those challenges are there irrespective of any type of analytics that you do. The goal is to try and limit the inconsistencies while still trying to provide that decision support.
Yes. Thanks a lot, Michael. And I think we ran out of time, but there's a lot of questions that are here. So I would like to encourage our presenters to please look at the Q&A session where the questions are, and you can respond to the ones that are applicable to you. And whoever has asked the questions, you will get responses directly from the presenters. Furthermore, if you have more questions, you can contact me, then I can help facilitate contact with the presenters, and you can be able to inquire more information from them. So I would like to take this opportunity. I'm going to do a proper closing at the end, but I want to thank the presenters from our first session. I think there's a lot of interesting things that are happening within the silvicultural modernization part. And there's various technologies which you indicated that are enabling various activities to happen. So I want to thank you for taking the time to share the information and the knowledge that you have with everyone. And from the amount of questions we have, there's definitely quite a lot of interest in the work that you are doing. So we are going to take a break, and we will be resuming just after 12. We're supposed to start at 12, but let's make it at about 5 past. And then we'll be moving to our international presenters, who will then be focusing on some of the international events that are happening and technologies that exist. So we will take a short break, and then we will be back at 5 past 12 to proceed with the second session. Thank you very much. Good afternoon and welcome back to everyone. We are glad that you are still with us, and we are now going to proceed with our second session, which has a bit of a more international flavor to it. And we are going to have three presentations from Brazil. And our first one is going to be delivered by Dr. Rafael Ribeiro Sola. And just a brief introduction about Dr. Rafael is that he did his undergraduate in forest engineering. And when he had the opportunity to do an internship where he assessed the first mechanized planter in Brazil. He then applied to do his master's to continue evaluating the planter, which at that time was the bracket P11A. And for his PhD, he then had the chance to be part of the group which evaluated and helped with the development of the first automated planter machine in Brazil. And that was the D61 planter. This was a project which involved a number of partners, being Brake Forest AB, Komatsu, as well as Hexagon Agriculture. During his student career, which he built at UNESCO School of Agriculture, Prof. Saulo was his main advisor. And during his PhD, he was able to go for an exchange at the Tokyo University of Agriculture and Technology for 6 months during 2017 and 2018. So since 2019, Dr. Rafael began working for Brake Forest, and he is a mechanized planting specialist for Brake Forest, and is currently following the development of new projects and performing the training of new customers. So today, Dr. Sola will be giving us the details of mechanized planting solutions for plantation forest, specifically with the perspective of Brazil. Dr. Sola, I'm going to hand over to you. Welcome, and we are looking forward to your presentation.
Hello everyone. Thank you, Mr. Muedanyi, for the introduction. Let me share my presentation. Okay, can you see there?
Yes, it's clear. You can go ahead.
Okay. So I'm working for Brake Forest now here in South America, in Brazil. And I will introduce you or present our solutions that we are using mainly here in Brazil. Just a brief about the history of Brake Forest. Brake Forest it was founded in 1922. The first silviculture equipment developed was a site prep machine called Brake Scarifier, which is this equipment in the pictures here. In 1970, the first unit was exported to Canada. Due to the name of the city, the equipment was called, or the operation with this equipment was called braking. So that's why we decided to change for the name of Brake Forest. In 1991, we developed the first brake planter. In 2013, Cranab Group acquired Brake Forest, and recently, Komatsu Group acquired Brake Forest from Cranab Group. And also, we have just completed 100 years. So talking about our planters, we have two models or versions. The P11, which has a blade to make the subsoiling, and the P12 has a reaper to make the soil preparation. Well, here in the South Hemisphere, or in Brazil. We don't need the blade to make mounding, or we are not used to have mounding as a soil preparation. Then the best solution for us is the P12. And this P12B is our new project, now our new equipment, which came from the P12A, and it was developed or actually improved here in Brazil. I will show a video. Muedanyi, if you can see if it's freezing or not. Sorry, it's the internet, but let's try.
Okay, no problem.
Okay, now talking about more specifications about the planter. This equipment is can be attached in an excavator from 20 tons up to 24. Now, actually, it can be in heavier machines, but we have just tested in those. Weight of this planter is 2.1 tons. The seedling type is container plants, but all the planters that we have, we can just plant container plants. Hydraulic specifications, the pressure and flow for this planter is 100 bar and 170 liters per minute. The power 24 volts. This carousel is the standard for this equipment, and it can have 196 seedlings. The soil preparation tool, as I said, for P12 is a ripper, and we can have with 1 or 3 rods. The depth, mainly here in Brazil, is 400 millimeters, but we can go up to 800 millimeters. And the accessories that we can attach or we can incorporate in this machine is a slow release applicator and side pikes for fertilizer and water or gel for irrigation. Well, talking about the carousel, so as I said, is 196 seedlings. We have 4 boxes with 49 seedlings. So here we can see how we can refill the 196 seedlings after finishing the existing seedlings. How we control to delivery seedling by seedling is using these gates under the box that we can see. Let me take the pointer. So here we have 2 gates, and the gates opens to be able to deliver 1 seedling by 1 seedling. Some plant requirements: the seedling needs to be container plants. We would like to have the straight ones, but with eucalyptus we cannot have just straight, so we can have some bent seedlings. But the main issue is when we don't have a good root system. If it's soft, it's not aggregated, it can be lose some parts and the weight will change. Our system is by gravity, so the weight of the seedling is the main thing for a good success. So talking about the accessories that we can have with the planter, we have 2 options for fertilizer. When we have the slow release fertilizer, which is not so common here in Brazil, we have this applicator. Here the fertilizer is fed in the same hole as the seedling, because the fertilizer is kind of pelletized and it cannot damage or burn the seedling. The standard fertilizer that we have, which is not slow release, we need to apply inside holes, because the root system cannot be touching the fertilizer. So we have this, we make 2 holes in the same time as we do the planting, and here we apply the fertilizer. It can go up to 400 cubic centimeters. Well, about the irrigation water that we have, or the gel. For irrigation water, normally we have this water tank behind the machine. In this picture, I believe it's 4,000 liters. We have the water pump, which is sending the water through the pipes and hose to the planter. Normally what we do here in Brazil, we remove the counterweight of the base machine and we add the water tank instead of. Behind the water tank, what we use to attach is a kind of nursery where we carry the seedlings that we are gonna use during the shift. Here just a picture showing the water dropping over the seedling. Well, as we are talking about steep terrains, the one thing that we found out here that it's really necessary to have during these operations, it's a tilt leveling, so we can keep the seedling as vertical as we need, or because if you have, like, let's say 20 degrees, you can just turn on the tilt and you can put the planter in the vertical position, so it can plant vertical. Just some information that I would like to share about a demo here in Brazil, in Southern. We tested during the reforestation and afforestation areas using eucalyptus seedlings. We are using the site fertilizer applicator with different dose, because each site, the forest company required a certain amount of fertilizer, and we needed to change that. Irrigation water was about 4 liters per seedling. because it was during the dry season. And about 4 months of demo with new operators, we had 5 different operators. Just to tell how the forest company used to do the operation before the planter. First, they had a excavator doing the subsoiling. Then they have the manual planting. Then they have irrigation, normally made with agriculture tractor pulling a water tank. And then again, we used to have the guys going there to apply the fertilizer. Then during the demo, they had the planter, which was doing all these operation, and also with the help of a partner here in Brazil, Hexagon, we are also geo-referencing each seedling that we are planting. Just some pictures about the areas, the forestation area that we had, and the reforestation areas. So we also planted some pine seedlings, but just in a short moment. Some numbers that we got during this demo. The productivity was in an average 187 seedlings per hour with all the 5 operators. The quality, it's one thing it's interesting to tell is they had the standard seedlings since the beginning, and the quality was over 70%. But then we decided to test just some selected seedlings with some a standard that we would, a pattern that we requested them. So this quality was over 80%. So we just noticed or tested that the quality of the seedling will give you or will promote a better quality of your planting, mainly with the seedlings that we have here in Brazil. Just a short video. And some other pictures here in Brazil, also in the same site. So here we were working up to 30 degrees. Here in the reforestation area, we needed to cut the grass, turn it in the different ways to be able to plant in the soil. Well, this is my presentation. Here you can have our social media, and if you need any other info, you can contact us through this social media. Thank you everyone. Thank you, Mr. Muedanyi, to invite me for this webinar. It was really a pleasure to share you some info from Brazil.
Thank you, Rafael. It is much appreciated. Very interesting things that you are involved in there, and I think Braki has also been leading and been involved in this for a number of years, and it's quite interesting the diverse amount of planting systems that you do offer. So thank you for sharing those details with us.
Thank you everyone.
I'm now going to move on to our next presentation, and our next presentation is going to be delivered by Dr. Kirlemi Oguri from EPEF. And just a brief background information about Dr. Oguri is that he's a forest engineer. He got his master's as well as PhD and conducted his postdoc at Sao Paulo State University, UNESCO. So he's been involved in working in mechanization for 6 years, coordinating the cooperative program for silviculture mechanization, which comprises of 12 forest companies in Brazil at the Forestry Science and Research Institute. That is also referred as EPEF. And this group is mainly focused on improving mechanization levels for silvicultural operation. So Dr. Oguri is a good friend, and we are very much appreciative of this opportunity to be able to hear from him, because today he will be enlightening us on the silviculture application of drones in Brazil. So Mr. Shweni as well as Mr. Twala will also find this quite interesting because it aligns nicely with what they've been speaking about. Guy, I'm going to hand over to you, and we're looking forward to your presentation.
Hello, everyone. First of all, I would like to thank you, Dr. Ramantswana, for inviting me for this webinar. I've been watching this webinar on the past years, and I'm really honored to be here today to share some information what we're doing here in Brazil using drones. So I hope I can show you some uses of drones here in Brazil. Okay, like Dr. Ramantswana said, my name is Guilherme Oguri. I've been working at EPAF the past 6 years. For those who don't know what EPAF is, we are a research institute, a non-profit association where we coordinate the studies and research alongside the forestry companies, which are 19 abroad. You can see on the screen their logos. So we work with them, and also we work with the academy. We have a very close touch with the university here in Brazil and also abroad, and we do research for these companies, but of course we need the academy to get all the knowledge that they have, so you can share with the forestry companies. So basically we have cooperative programs at EPAF, which I coordinated the PCMF alongside Professor Saulo Guerra. Maybe he's on the audit right now. And Professor Saulo is also a friend of ours, me and Muedanyi. And he is the scientific leadership of this program. The PCMF stands for Cooperative Program for Mechanization and Automation Forestry. And basically my role here is to coordinate all the mechanization projects with Professor Saulo. And back in 2016, we gathered all the companies to decide what focus in our program, and it was decided to focus on the mechanization of silviculture, because the harvesting is there's a lot of machines already for harvesting process and also logistics. So they decided to focus on silviculture mechanization. Okay. Maybe in other opportunity I can share some project that we're doing with machines. For example, planting, we've been working with Rafael also, and the different planters. But today here is the time to talk about the main use for drones in Brazil. I will focus today's presentation on the pesticide applications, because we have been conducting our research aiming this activity, but here in Brazil we're also using drones for mapping, using cameras or using LiDAR, and the drones, we have some drones made here in Brazil, but we're also studying drones from abroad. And like I said, I will focus today during the time available only on pesticide applications, and also because our research is aiming for. I will start with weeding. So we conduct an experiment in 2021 to spray post-emergent herbicide for weeds and eucalyptus sprouts control. And back at that time, we used this drone is a XIG P30 from 2020, Series 2 plant protection. The liquid container capacity is for 16 liters. Maybe you know this drone is one of the most famous drones worldwide, and we're using this drone also in Brazil, and different drones for weeding, but specifically for this research we tested these drones, and I will show some results in terms of operational performance, okay, and later on I'll talk about quality. So I divided the presentation in 2 times. First, I will focus on operational performance, and then I will talk about the quality. Here, the herbicide that you use it on this research is glyphosate, sulfonylurea, and mineral oil, applying at 10 liters per hectare, and the mean speed was 5.3 meters per second. The application width was 4 meters, and our experimental area was 137 hectares. It's a small area. It's not a huge area, but we could have some results during this experiment. Here is the breakdown of the time and motion study. It's important to say that auxiliary time, which is represented here, 47%, higher than productive, but it's important to mention that auxiliary time is composed of those activities that must exist in order to produce. For example, the time that we spend change the batteries and also to refill the tank. So is a must activity to produce. So we divide the auxiliary and productive. Mainly here, productive is the flight, the drone flying and spraying the herbicides. So you will notice that in my results here that all the times the auxiliary is higher than productive, which is normal. And I will discuss later about this. And the auxiliary, for example, for this drone, it's 47% higher than productive, but in this drone is able to what they call plug and play. So the drone comes down on the land, and we can shift the tank, the herbicide tank, and also the batteries very fast. It's just plug and play, so it's very fast, but it's still consuming time more than the productive. The operation productive here was 2.5 hectare per hour and efficiency of 44%. Okay. We also tested the very same drone to spray pesticide to control the yellow beetle. You can see here the yellow beetle. I don't know if it's is a problem in South America, in South Africa, but here in Brazil is a huge problem. The yellow beetle, they eat the leaves, and so we need to control them. We tested this in 2021, and you use the imidacloride and the vegetable oil, applying at 6 liters per hectare. The speed was a little bit higher than the past test. It was 8.4 meters per second, and the total area was 43 hectares, of a very small area. And here the result, like I said, the auxiliary time is still higher than the productivity, mainly because the batteries. So the flight is still in the air around 5 up to 10 minutes for spraying due to the battery capacity, and our productive was 8.2 hectare per hour, which is higher than applying herbicide due to the higher speed, and with an efficiency of 47%. We also use drones for ants control. This time we use the DJI Agra MG1P with a special tank for solid pesticides. In this case, we use fipronil, a granular fipronil. So you can see here in the pictures, it is small, but I believe you can see it. Is a solid tank, so that you can just switch between solid and liquid tanks. We apply 40.5 kilogram per hectare of fipronil on a total area of 236 hectares. Okay. In terms of productivity was 24%. The auxiliary is way higher than productive, maybe because the time to expand to change the tank is higher, or to refill the tank with fipronil is higher than only switch tanks. So that's why the acceleration is very high. We need to go further on these studies to apply in more areas and the wider areas, so you can have better results. But this was can give us a really good picture of the drones used in Brazil. Now I will talk about the quality control. It's important to mention that this quality control was made by a company in Brazil called Agroefetiva, which is based at São Paulo State University in Botucatu City. And this slide is to talk about the determination of its prior width profile. So here the result of the applications, so they can make this graph that can show the deposit profile. And for this drone, this particular company recommended a width of 3 meters, 3 meter width. So they find out that they could go further up to 4 meters. So it's a increase of almost 30% of width. So it's a really good result. And with a coefficient of variation of 15%. And also we discussed a lot about drifts using drones, and they did a really good experiment here to show that the position of the herbicide was between 4 and 64 meters away from the target area. So yes, there's drift, but unfortunately they couldn't evaluate the damage caused here, but they proved that you still have drift using drones on a distance of 4 up to 64 meters away from the target area. And as respected, you can see here that there's a less drifty concentration was found in the further distance, for example here, and here closer to the target control, the concentration was higher. Dr. Muedanyi, that's what I want to share with you guys today. I'll be here for questions and answers. Was really quickly, but I would like to take the opportunity to show some work that we've been doing here in Brazil. Here's my contact. You all can contact me by email. We're glad to answer you all.
Thank you so much, Dr. Oguri. Much appreciated for that presentation. Again, it just shows the diverse use of drones and the applications that we can have. But also, I think what is important is the monitoring of the effectiveness, and the amount of detail you are going to is very, very impressive. And I'm hoping that as you monitor and get more information, it can improve efficiencies. Thank you very much. Just a reminder to our audience that we can post questions on the chat, and then I will pose the questions to the presenters as soon as we are finished with the last presentation. Just indicate who you are posing the question to, whether it's to Dr. Raphael or Dr. Oguri or Mr. Suarez, and then we will direct the questions to them accordingly. I'm now going to move on to our final presentation, which is quite an interesting one because it almost brings everything together and brings us to a realization of how technology, yes, can be used as an enabler, but also what are some of the challenges that exist. I'm now going to introduce Mr. Ronaldo Suarez. He is from Hexagon Agriculture, and he has a Bachelor of Business Administration with specializing in forest trade and environmental management. He also has a postgraduate production engineering. He also did an MBA in business management. Mr. Suarez has been working in the forestry area for 30 years, and he has had the opportunity to work in the division of forestry, silviculture, harvesting, logistics, road construction, and development of mechanization and technology. So he's well vested about the forestry industry. He's currently responsible for Hexagon's forestry business in Latin America, North America, Europe, Africa, as well as Asia. So today Mr. Suarez was going to give us a perspective on the challenges of integrating technology in Forest 4.0. Mr. Ronaldo, we're looking forward to your presentation, and you can go ahead.
Okay. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes, I can see it. It's very clear.
Okay. First of all, I would like to say thanks for Mandela University and especially for Dr. Muedanyi for invitation. Okay. I chose some subjects about the challenger, the technology from installation from Forest 4.2. On the challenge of integration technology in Forest 4.0. The agenda is who we are, Hexagon. The first challenger, what you want. The second challenger, standardization and quality of implements. And the third challenger about investment. And the last subject is reflection about this subject. Just a little bit introduce who we are, Hexagon, just for everybody knows who is Hexagon. Hexagon, we are a leader in forest solution and more than 50 solution. In the last year, we work in 7 million hectares of activity. We have more than 25,000 equipment in operation. We are all continents, more than 20,000 employees in 50 countries. Our focus in research and development, like a 10-12% net sale invest in R&D. How about 400 million euros the last year? More than 4,000 employees in R&D working in development and innovation. More than 3.270 active patents. The technology development by Hexagon are presenting the annual production of 75% of cars of the world and 90% of aircraft and 85% of the production of the smartphone of the world have some Hexagon technology. Let's do it for the first challenger. What do you want? That's a very good question when you to introduce the technology. So the first is resistance to change. Everybody have a little resistance to change. Some question when you try to introduce the technology in the company, he asking, how's the reference? Who is the benchmark for this technology? Who's working now for looking how to work? And sometimes we don't know the technology. And we don't have sometimes a special personnel for introduce the technology. Or we have a provide between the system and this provider it's ready to installing or to work with this new technology. He have a motivate for that. So sometimes the answer, the speed answer is very different for demanded for forest companies. And we need to ask for internal discussion. We have internal infrastructure for adopt this new technology. And in the another one, it's about the quality information. So just for you know, and for day, we have like a 1.5 billion search in Google. So today you have a lot of information for people thinking. So we need to filter about the quality information. And every stuff, how about the project scope? This is the first challenge for companies say, what do you want? So we need to have a clear, very clear project scope and focus for what kind the technology we need for now or for the next 2 years for attend, what kind of quality information we need, who treat the data, who involved in this project. So this is very important for companies to have a very clear project scope. This is the first challenger. Many times we travel for visit some companies, they don't know exactly they want. So it's the first step for success. So it's very important to have a very clear project scope. The second challenger is standardization and quality of implement. Just for everybody to put it the same way, how does basic technology for introduce for embedded technology in silviculture forest? Doesn't matter what kind of the trendy market you put in your company, that's work is the same way. So we have a satellite sign geoposition. After then, we can get a speed tractor and area and quantity to be applied in calibration reference. After then, you have applied turn numbers. And this goes to the driving to control the hydraulic stuff. And after then, we got a fertilizer or herbicide, whatever we have, and we have a sensor to confirm amount, the quantity, and give it back for the computer, and that computer is ready for transfer the data for any system for the management. So that is the basic system for forest precision. But we have a lot of actor between and the data between the manager or can influence the data, like a DAFO climate condition, or about the quality or horsepower tractor. That's tractor, it's enough for this activity. You need to ask it. Maybe sometimes when you make a subsoil, it's not enough, the horsepower, so you don't have a good productivity. So about the implements, we talk later about the implements. And how about embedded system? How quality this embedded system kept the data, or we trust in this system? How about area characteristics? How kind of area we are working? Have a stone, multi, flat, bendy, and how about the operation? This guy is training. This guy is motivated for doing his activity. And how about the operation process? So the last one, we have a management and control. So we can see here, we have a lot actor you can influence about the productivity or about the introduce the technology. So we need to work each kind of this subject for to have a success in the implement the technology in forest. Let's start to talk about standardization and quality of forest equipment. This is, for me, it's the main of the problem or the challenger the last 20 years in the forests silviculture introduce the technology. We have a four actor in this case. The first one, we have a forest industry, whatever is wood products or pump companies. The second one, on the other side, we have a big manufacturers. The manufacturer from for water or subsoil or tractor. And we have a providers, and we have local small manufacturer I call the forest enthusiasts. Let's talk about the forest industry. When you have a conversation with this forest industry about developing machine, developing implement for introduce the technology or have a best quality for this tractor or the implement, that company say it's not our core business. Our core business is pump or wood products. So you go to the big manufacturer. When you have some meeting with big manufacturers about the developing some special products for forest business, and you show the market share for big manufacturer, we are so small if you compare with agriculture marketing. So many companies doesn't have interest to develop products for forest business because it's too small. So the another side, we have a provider, and providers, the goal it's not develop or produce the tractor or the implements. Their goal is to make activity forestry like subsoil, but this happen because they can buy in the market or can found the special tractor or special implements for forests. So they for circumstances they did developing and produce some old implements, but the most time is we don't have engineers to work in this project, or we don't have good quality, or this guy don't have cash flow for development of these products. So the another size, we have a local or small manufacturer that I call forest enthusiasts. This is the most products in forestry, I believe in South Africa, I believe in South America, I believe in Australia, whatever you have, because we are visiting all parts of the world. It's the same problem. This guy is very motivated to developing, but they don't have a technique enough for developing. They don't have industry process, the high quality. So this is for me, this is the best, the main wall for developing quality or special products for forest. So we have in this case, we have a low supply and quality of implement. If you look the picture, like 20 years ago, the subsoil working, and you have a picture now, you can put side by side, you can see it's a little difference. So very little difference. So we can in any event in front for development, because we need to put this guy in the same room in discussion. How can we resolve this problem? We need more investment and more technology for development equipment for the forest. Here's I have a example. Is a case, is a real case about the non-standardization in quality implement against in standards and quality implements. And the first chart, we have a no standardization in quality implements. You can see this is by fertilizer. You can see the histogram. You can see the distribution by fertilizer with the recommendation is not good. This is green. It's about the recommendation. It's okay, and that part is not okay. It's out of the recommendation. Now in the second square, we have this the same work in the fertilizer, and you can see the histogram looks better than the first one. You can see the almost 60% is the ready. It's reach the recommendation about the fertilizer. You can see is the deviation looks like the same. When you look at the amount of the fertilizer and apply in the plot, it looks like it's the same. It's a little bit different as a 0.48 and 0.32. But when you look local, like tree by tree or seed by seed, you can see the difference. The distribution of the first no standardization implements is bad, is compared with the second one. So we know, everybody knows, it's very important to treat the fertilize each individual tree. Okay, so that is a good example to compare the good and bad quality implement. The third challenger I call investment. So for you need to understand how does the investment work in the forest business, and we need to have a division in silviculture. We have the implantation. We have a harvester. It's a very different approach about the investment. So the about implantation, we talk about seedling, subsoil, and weed control. This is implantation. In harvest, you talk about how a harvester and a forwarder. And implement, the base for implement is the base tractor for agriculture base. So for the harvester, it's a Scandinavian forest base. When you so the last 20 years, the technology is very slow development in implantation, and against the harvester, a very fast system development and deploy the last 20 years. And implantation have a very reduced number of manufacturers, and the harvester we have a lot of choice of manufacturers. And the implantation have a limit, and I show the next slide about the investment. So in the harvest, you have a very specific investment. Have some reason for that. It's happening. And so we have, for this, we have a low technology against the harvest. It's a very high technology. So I have an example here. If you decide to implement to like 1,000 hectare investment for implantation or harvester. So this is a number from productivity in number for cost from Brazil. Okay, it's in dollar. So for 1,000 hectare a year, we invest for harvester like about 1.3 millions. And when you go to implantation for the same area, like 1,000 hectare per year, we invest like $245,000. So the investment for implantation, compare with a harvester, is like a 15.36%. So the investment for implantation very low if you compare for harvester. So if you want to change the technology, change to change for forest the 4.0, we need to invest more in implantation. Okay. So in the finish, I have some reflections about the challenger for introduce the technology in silviculture. Technology, it's not the silver bullet. We have a people involved. So we need to motivate, we need to training, we need to have engagement, the people in this process. So technology is not cheap. We need investment, but it is very important to keep the future. And my last reflection is you need to work in the four hands. And remember, we need to have working together with pump and wood companies, a big manufacturing provider and small, and I across another ones is the company, the technology. It's not the problem for outsourcing for another guy. This need to every guys involved in this problem need to work together for improve. And it's the same when you talk about we need to involve the university to help and to give some answer for how to solve this hard problem we have, and the same similar problem in any kind of country you go. Whatever you are in the world to have the same problem, very similar, and we talk about the implantation. And I will like to say thank you for the time for people to watch my little approach. And this is my contact. If you put the code, you can add my contact in WhatsApp.
Well, thank you very much, Naldo, and that was an interesting presentation that you gave, giving us perspective of the challenges that are there. And I think what stood out for me was the issue that you indicated regarding the need for investment. If we simply compare apples with harvesting, we can see that the investment in silvicultural equipment is very small. And for us to improve efficiencies, we need investment in that area as well. But as you indicated, technology won't solve everything. We need a combination of different stakeholders that will be able to work together to bring improvements. Okay, thank you. So I would like to ask our presenters to turn on their cameras so that we can go to our question and answers session. And I'm going to go through a few questions that have been indicated that they will be responded to by a specific presenter. So I'm going to start off with some of the questions here. Let's have a look. There we go. Questions for brachyphorus. Is there any way that the heads mitigate the risk of breaking when soil is either very hard or very rocky? How often do you get stoppages from the seedlings getting stuck or falling down skew in the machine, seeing it is gravity controlled? What is the GPS accuracy of the current system used by brachy? And are the lines straight or do they cause I suppose that is spacement problems like mechanized Peters? The question is from John. So there's quite a lot there, but
yeah,
Rafael, if you can respond.
Well, let me see. Well, the first part, how can we mitigate the risk of breaking the planter in rock soils? We haven't tested in different kind of rock soils here in Brazil, but when we did, the only issue that we had was with an old planter. So the reaper was a little bit worn out and the rod broke, but we welded a new one and it was okay. So I believe how you can mitigate, the operator can just skip when you have a really rock part, or what we did, they can make like a shallow subsoiling, and then you can plant. But normally we don't have issues with that. It's a really tough reaper or rod, and it's well, we made it in some areas, and it was okay, just with the old reaper that we had a broken in the rod.
Okay, thanks, Rafael. So maybe just to add on that one, Diane, we're just asking to combine with that options for ground engaging tools for different soil types. For example, higher clay or higher silica, mineral versus sand.
Yeah, P12 just have for now the reaper. So normally in clay soils or more hard soils, we have a deeper rod. So as I said, we can have the reaper from 400 millimeters up to 800 millimeters. So normally in clay soils, we have a deeper soil preparation compared with sand soils. In sand soils, we can have like a shallow subsoiling, like 400 millimeters. I think it's okay.
Okay, thank you for that response. And here's a question which seems to be, it's from Sia from Mondi, and either one of you can respond. It says, what is the labor availability situation around forestry areas in Brazil or South America in general? As the industry in South Africa, we are embracing silviculture, modernization or mechanization more. We are at a crossroad, retaining manual jobs for small, medium enterprise forestry companies. As with harvesting, is excavator more preferred over bulldozer for mechanized planting? Anyone can respond?
About the labor availability, I believe it's more or less like the rest of the world, or maybe like there in South Africa. We are facing a lack of labor. Of course, some parts in Brazil, you are not struggling with that yet, but in some parts it's a real problem right now, and that's why we are going for the mechanized planting here in Brazil. So depends where you are, but I believe it's a problem that all the country will face sooner or later. About the planter and the base machine, well, the bulldozer, I believe it's more for flat areas. So with a bulldozer as the D61, you can go up to 10 degrees. And with an excavator, you can go up to 30, depends on safety, but normally we go up to 30 degrees.
Okay, thanks, Rafael.
You're welcome.
And then I would like to go to the next one, and it asks, what is the maximum slope that the planter can operate in, and what is the maximum productivity one can achieve with the planter? That was from Alan Jella.
Yeah, okay, so the most, the higher slope that we, or the steeper that we have been, was 32 degrees, but it was one forest company, and they were just testing it. So I believe this is what we say, because you have the safety rules and you need to follow them. And here in Brazil, they say it's up to 30 degrees in the most of the forest companies. And the other part is about the productivity. Okay, yes. The productivity that we can have right now, it's, I believe it's 220, 240 seedlings per hour. This is what we already had during the development of P12B, but this was without the GPS guiding the operator. With guiding the operator, we had 200 seedlings, 216 seedlings per hour.
Okay. This one is from Ben, and he is again asking about the P12B. He's saying, I'm just going to focus on the part that was not touched on. And could the head be equipped with a GPS and to also allow the machine to mark and pit and plant?
Yeah. This GPS system that we are using right now, it's from our partner, Hexagon. Ronaldo is also here. So yeah, it can guide and also mark the spots that you planted.
Okay.
And the accuracy, I believe it's up to 5 centimeters, if I'm not wrong. Maybe Ronaldo can help me with that.
2.5 centimeters for the target.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, Rafael. I'll give you a break a bit now and go to Ronaldo. The question is regarding the investments in silviculture, over investments in harvesting. How could we calculate the amount that we could invest in silvicultural activities, implantation? When we harvest, we know that we have what we have, and the relative value is what we get out from the forest. When we talk about establishment, we are referring to investing money in a more high-risk venture. I agree. Says I agree. When we talk about establishment, we are referring to investing money in more high risk. I agree with investments into silviculture, but how can we motivate investors to see the potential of making profit?
Well, this is the question, the $1 million. The problem is we have two times. When you talk about the harvesting, harvest is too short to get a result. You go to the harvest and the forwarder, you cut the tree. It's like 1 month or 2 months. You have a product ready for the industry. It's so the investment you can see in very short time. But when you look at the silviculture, like 8 years, sometimes 30 years, sometimes 100 years. We talk about like 10 years. It's a long time for investment, and people ask, well, if I have an investment in the silviculture, you talk about the manager, you can guarantee results 10 years later. It's very difficult to say this to answer this question. So sometimes the company doesn't want to invest a lot because it's too long time to see the money back. So, but I think this process now it's close to finish the result. You can across the line because you can get more productivity. So we need to invest in technology. These many companies. In the last yesterday we have a example. Some company say, well, our productivity is not advanced. We need to change the process. So I can hear many companies in all of the world to talk the same way. We need to invest. So it is for surviving, for the competitivity. So this is I think it's that the question for internal companies need to do. Okay.
May I add a comment here?
Yes, please go ahead, Gay.
I totally agree with Ronaldo in terms of it's hard to measure the return on the silviculture because it's a long time period to invest 7-8 years on the harvesting. You just harvest the tree and you have the return right away. So I totally agree with him. We've been working, as you know, Muedanyi, with the forest company in terms of mechanized silviculture, and it's total disbalanced, this investment. And also here in Brazil, we're developing our technology for silviculture. for harvesting, we just export the machines almost ready. For example, in the case of the braque, we brought the braque here to Brazil, so we need to develop the head. Started with the P11A, and now it's to P12B. So it took almost, I don't know, almost 10 years to get this product. So it's really different. Harvesting is the same all over the road, but in terms of silviculture, we have a very specific situations, the way we produce, the way we plant, the way we irrigate it. So it is really hard. I agree with you, it's really hard to answer this question, but at least I believe we could show a scenario that Brazil, that what happens here in terms of investment of harvesting and also silviculture.
Thanks for that. That really helps. Then Rafael, back to you. There is 2 questions here from Asitandile Gogocha as well as Sanele Ngobo. And what they are asking is, how do you monitor water during irrigation? Because you indicated that the machine does also irrigate. How does it measure the amount of water it releases for each seedling, making sure that the seedling does not die and that the fertilizer does not wash away? And then Sanele also touches a bit on this, but she just asks, he just asked that have you done comparisons between options 1 and option 2 of the equipment in terms of growth, survival, and uniformity, and were there any differences?
Okay, talking about the watering, we have a system that controls the amount of water that you apply. So before going to the field, the forest company says that they want to apply like 4 liters or 5 liters, or here in the south, 1 liters, or even no water. So it depends of the company about the amount that they need, and we just set in our system, and it controls the amount of water. And we have made some tests, and well, the deviation of this, of the amount of water is less than 8%. So it's really precise. So well, I think it's about our system, how it works. And about the question about the 2 types of fertilizer. Well, sorry, but we don't have this slow release here in Brazil due to the cost of this, and we just have the standard or the quick release fertilizer. We would like to test that because it's easier for us to apply. The slow release applicator is easier system, but we just have we just have the quick release fertilizer, and it's well, we didn't have this comparison between the 2 types. Sorry.
Okay. Here's a question from Mr. Nicky Gwenda. He's asking Braque Forest, what is the percentage cost advantage of full mechanized planting with P12 versus the individual activities done separately? Soil prep, planting, irrigation, fertilizing. So he's just asking the cost advantage if you do everything at once and when you separate.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. As I said, or as I believe Ronaldo and also Guilherme, they were speaking about cost and return. Brazil is a huge country, and depends where you are, the cost will also change. In the first company that we made a demo, just in talk with them, just the soil preparation, because they have a contractor to do that, they were charging this company more than they spent with the planter doing on the whole process. And in other parts of Brazil, where the costs they have more contractors available to do the process, the cost is really competitive with they do right now, and they are also changing from contractor to their own operations. So it's also another a good benefit for them. So I believe now, due to the companies didn't have options, now with the mechanized planting with all the functions, they have more, how can I say, they have more place to argue with the contractor, so they can try to meet or to match a good price for their operations. And I believe it's more about that, because they didn't have a lot of options before, and now they have, and that's how they are negotiating with the contractors or going for their own operations.
Okay, thanks, Rafael. Maybe Guy, just to bring you in, your perspective on what would you say to someone who looks at technology as something that takes away jobs from people? As you develop into new innovative ways of doing work, how do you ensure that you grow? That is inclusiveness of the communities you work within. This came from just international community.
Okay, it's a trick question, but this question always came up when we were discussing technologies, mechanization, and in my point of view, it's part of the evolution. If you think about the cars, you think about a lot of products, it's part of the evolution. I understand that the mechanization can take away some jobs on the field, but how we say before here by Rafael, some parts of Brazil is really hard to find people to work at field. The people are going to the cities. They rather to work inside a mall with air conditioning than work at under the sun all day long, walking through the rocks, stumps, and everything. It is a dangerous activity. And in my point of view, what we're doing here is to give a better place to work. But on the other hand, we try to come up with some courses and some trainings for those people that can still working on forestry, but in the different place, not at the field. We have a similar case here in Brazil with sugarcane harvesting, which was forbidden to burn the cane before cutting, and all the cutting was manual. And can you imagine people going through the sugarcane field, just burn it and cutting all day long those burned sugarcane. My city, my home city is close to a lot of field, and then they forbid it to burn because of the environment. So they came up with machines, and of course all those jobs were done. But the condition of working on the sugarcane just burn was terrible. And in terms of environment now is way better because they don't burn. We don't have that smell of burn sugarcane. It's a trick question. There's a lot of discussion about it, but I believe in the short term, I believe it's evolution. We need to evolve. We need to evolve. We need to give better place for people to work.
Okay, thanks for that response, Guy. Then there's a comment here from Sia from Mondi who says forest operating environment is not homogeneous as agriculture. Developing implements equipment is really unscalable, hence the lack of standardization or quality at this time, at least. So as I close, there's one that was also asked here by Nunkule Kuntinga, and she was basically inquiring if we do have the adequate infrastructure. I suppose in the context of South Africa, but also in Brazil, it will be applicable for us to modernize as we want to do. And I know Ronaldo touched on the issue of investment, but perhaps Ronaldo, you want to respond?
I would like to have some comment. The last question about the Guilherme did. It's this is the wishes the four hands works to the government, the community, and the companies. Okay, we can delay the technology, but you can stop. Okay, in Brazil we have a very strong labor law. Okay, I have a good example for that. I was a provider for harvester when I was a chainsaw. When we chainsaw for harvesting, everybody's afraid. No, our job is done now. No, it's not work. It's not happening. Why? Because when the laborers work, it's just one turn for a day. When you put the harvester work, it's 3 turns a day. So that people, it's improve your salary because you're training for operator, for mechanical, whatever. So it's not happen this way. It's like a 100%. It's file hide. It's not happen. So it's a good opportunity for people improve your education, improve your salary because you have a symbol function. Now you training for like operation for brachy, whatever, harvesters, whatever. You need to improve this training guide, so you improve your salary, you improve your condition to survive. Okay. So, but we need to have a good discussion with the government and the company and the community for explain exactly what happened. Okay. Sometimes maybe when you have a lot of disposal worker, maybe sometime in government you need to give some help for across this time the technology. But I repeat, we can delay, but you can stop. Okay.
Okay. Now, thank you. We are almost out of time, so there's a few other questions that are here. So I'm going to ask our presenters to maybe just respond directly to the inquiries that are there. And as I come to a close, I would like to take this opportunity and just thank all our speakers for the time and dedication you took in preparing for these presentations and being willing to share this information. I saw a very good comment here from Marike. Vice, and she indicated that I truly like to thank the university for the very informative webinar. I've learned a number of new information. It is great to be part of this. Thank you to all the presenters. You are the pioneers of knowledge, and your knowledge will make the future possible. And I think she summarizes what has happened here very well. So we began at the very beginning, and we had some interesting presentation from Mr. Damian Naidu, who looked at interesting technologies that SAPI is involved in terms of improving nurseries, how measurements are being done, as well as their rapid quality assessment system that is in place. And we also saw that they are using computer vision as well as the use of sensors. And that is very interesting technology that will be important going into the future. And I think it's paving a way to a very good information which can help improve survival as well as uniformity when we plant. Mr. Shweni also came and he gave us a good overview of practical and operational things that he is doing within his business, and that is to use drones for spraying, the use of a dozer on steeper terrain, and all this is to improve the manner in which things are done, efficiencies and economics and safety. So that was quite an interesting and informative presentation. Mr. Sam Twala also gave us a presentation on the diverse application of drones and some of the work that he is involved in terms of developing early detection of fires using drones. That is interesting and something that we must look out for, as well as challenges in terms of the legislation that we need to be aware of. Mr. Michael also brought a perspective on how satellite technology can be used as a decision supporting tool. That yes, we can gather a lot of data and we can monitor and look, but the key is us being able to take that information and apply it in decision making that will ultimately improve our sustainability. And Dr. Raphael came in with another perspective on mechanized planting solutions, which are actually in practice in Brazil, both for relatively flat areas and steep areas, and making us aware that there is technology that exists which can perform the planting activity. Yes, there are refinements which need to take place as we measure, but the technology is there and it is being improved on. And thanks to Dr. Oguri, who also gave us an overview of the application of drones in terms of how drones are being used to fight pesticides, apply pesticides, do weeding operations, as well as what is common in Brazil, and control, which we don't have in South Africa, luckily. So please don't bring ants from Brazil to us. We have enough pests on this side. Then lastly, Mr. Ronaldo Soares, who gave us a good presentation about the overall challenges that do exist in terms of introducing technology at this level. And he indicated the challenges with investments, but also the need for us and stakeholders across the world to interact to improve the way in which we do things. So I would like to now come to the point wherein I take this opportunity to thank all the stakeholders that were involved in this webinar. I want to thank the Nelson Mandela University as well as the Forestry Department for supporting this initiative, Dr. Kaluke Mawila, and all our presenters individually, as I indicated what they presented about. I thank you for your time, as well as the organizations that were able to allow you to present. Thank you to all the attendees for taking the time to register and also come and listen and be actively involved. The number of questions that came do show that you were actively interested to learn and hear what the presenters presented about. Again, I also want to thank Phumlani. Some of you, the attendees, may not be aware of him, but he's been facilitating everything here in terms of the technology, queuing everyone in and making sure that the webinar runs smoothly. So thanks, Phumlani, to you and your team, Tiffany as well, and the IT department, Rolly and your team. Thank you so much for the support you gave us. And I also want to take this opportunity to thank Melissa as well as Monica, who are involved in the marketing and helping us with the planning of this webinar. Annually, they've really brought support for us, and I want to thank them for their help. Further to that, I want to thank Tandekile, one my master's student who helped with the organizing of this event and provided the necessary support. And just some basic announcements is that if you are interested in the presentations, if the presenters give permission, we will be able to share them based on their approval. And lastly, for you to just take note of is that we are already in the process of planning next year's webinar, and the date for next year's webinar will be on Wednesday, the 18th of October, 2023. So the year and time runs very quickly. So again, as we start planning, we are always willing to take your inputs. So if you've got ideas on how we can improve, perhaps a concept or technology that is of interest and you would want to hear about it in this platform, please feel free to engage with me, send me an email, and we will consider it when we plan next year's webinar. And finally, I just want to say we thank all the participants and everyone that engaged in this, and we say we appreciate that there are people that are interested in improving our industry and to see it being sustainable going into the future. So thank you very much, everyone, and may you have a wonderful and blessed day further. From our side, thank you. God bless.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Presenters, if you can please just hang on. We just want to take a picture with everyone live. Thank you.
Okay.